So for today, what I'm kind of looking at doing is the first part of it, and you'll have to stick with me. It's been a few years since I've gone all the way through the incident from the front to the back end of it, but looking at probably about an hour going through the event, talking about it. We have a PowerPoint that will help us kind of explain as the chronological events happened. And then in the second half of it, we're really going to look at how do we take the event that happened there and apply it to today's fire ground. And very timely for us, and as you guys know, is that we've done residential apartments, and as we go into commercial buildings now, this will be a kind of a perfect lead into those things as we move forward. So a little bit about my experience when the event happened in 2001. In 2001, I was a captain for the Phoenix Fire Department. I was working out of Station 5. I had just taken the BC's test, and promotions had kind of slowed down, so I didn't expect to be promoted for a little while. The event occurred on a Wednesday, March 14th, and probably about a week afterwards, and I was not at the event on the day of. I was an A shifter, and the event happened on C shift. About a week or so afterwards, I was asked by Chief Brunacini and the operation chief, Steve Kreis, if I would manage what became known as the recovery. And part of it is going in and sitting down with Bruno was that the event had happened, and what he wanted to do was prevent it from ever happening again. And he really gave us an open opportunity to go through everything in the department and look at operations and equipment and look at staffing of vehicles, staffing of additional apparatus, what things did we need to change. There was a whole section that was set up on technology. And we'll talk a little bit later in here about tick cameras. The unique thing, and now I'm starting to date myself and we'll go through this, is that the Phoenix Fire Department had, I think it was 4 thermal imaging cameras at the time. And what we had done was taken one north, south, and east and west. And at Station 5, we actually had one of those cameras, and you could special call a unit to bring the camera, and it should, I don't know what we're paying now, Adam, probably about $600 for one or something. I think it was about $30,000 per camera. And I would have to say it was more of a toy than it really was a tool at that time as far as the cameras go. So I left the field, went to staff, spent just over a year on staff, was the liaison for the department, and went through really all of the investigations. So the NIOSH, which is from all firefighter fatalities get investigated by NIOSH. They came to town and did a report. The NFPA came to town and did a report. Of course, there was an OSHA investigation because of a line of duty death, and then because of the additional injuries that we had to go through. And then there was the arson portions of it that went through. Each one of those, I was kind of the liaison that helped manage those. And then as a department, we set up the recovery where we went through all these different areas, training, and came up with a plan with the goal at the end of the year, we had to have the final report done. And so we were able to do those things and be able to move on from there. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here. Jason and Joe are here. Our goal is to be able to record these, and they really have set all of this up. We told Jason he had a temporary assignment here for a little while, and now we have a studio and everything else for being able to move forward. And yeah, pretty impressive. Let's go to the next slide there, Joe. If you look on there, where do we get in trouble as firefighters on the fire ground? And let's just hit it so that those words come up. You know, over the years, it's been pretty consistent that firefighters get in trouble is heart attacks, responding to or returning to from an incident, getting lost, toxic inhalation, collapse, or the thermal insult. Still today, the number one cause of firefighter fatalities of people that are at work is heart attacks, and that's about 50% of the fatalities that happen out there. I think we all know that cancer and now really the mental health side of it is a huge challenge for our members and members across the United States. We could probably spend a whole day on those. Driving and riding is just the amount of activity that we do on the streets. and the responding to and returning from events. But today, when we look at the bottom four, getting lost in a building, toxic inhalation, or basically running out of air, the collapse of a structure, or the inability to be able to get back out of it, and the last one, thermal insult. All four of those occurred at Southwest Supermarket. And as we go through, we'll kind of describe those and really focus on those four areas. We'll focus a lot of them, and there's a picture there of that firefighter going into the structure of residential. And while that probably for all of us is close to probably about 70 or 80% of the activity that we do, today we're going to look at that commercial building and then talk about also how we take those things and move them back from there. So on the next slide is yesterday was the 20th anniversary, March 14th. Just by chance, I was in Phoenix yesterday, was able to go by the site. The site today is the Brett Tarver Learning Center. It sits on the corner there along with the kind of a parking lot and everything around there. But it was kind of eerie that the other buildings are all still there today. And almost, well, they're in the exact same location, but an awning, the bakery that was on the other side that we'll go through, everything else is exactly the way it was 20 years ago. So a little bit about Brett. Brett was a member of the Phoenix Fire Department. He was 40 years old. He had originally started his career in a department called Sun City. And if you look at Phoenix, Phoenix is kind of in the middle, and then all the way around, there's a number of departments. Sun City is just, as you know, is a retirement community out there. Brett had gone out there and worked a few years, had left the job, and then had came back and had gotten hired by Phoenix. He was a firefighter paramedic. He worked at Station 14. From the Southwest Supermarket, it was east of there, about a mile. And if you look at that neighborhood, the neighborhood is a very lower economic, social economic neighborhood. The very residential, the commercial in that area is kind of what you see there is those small businesses. But as a first due, it's a very, very busy area. And is both on the EMS side and on the fire side. And this is really important, is that the people, Engine 14, Engine 21, Engine 24, those companies run together really all the time. But most of the fire activity over there is residential. It's very small, probably 1,500, 2,000 square feet. Just to the south of there is the freeway, and on the other side of the freeway is what I would say more commercial. A lot of auto recycling places, exterior type bigger buildings, cardboard compacting, auto junkyards, a bunch of things there. But as far as a location, a very busy place around there. One of the other things about Brett is Brett's size. I said he was 40 years old. Brett was 6'4" tall and 289 pounds. And so as we go through the rescue and we talk about rescuing people out of a building, his size, and Brett was the type of guy that wasn't fat on his body, that was muscle on his body. And so as we go through the rescue, we'll talk more about that and some of the challenges that led to the rescue. But also at the same time, some of the other firefighters that had to be removed were not in the same size, but had some of the same struggles for being able to get him out of that building. The next slide is, we'll talk about throughout here, and in the beginning part, we'll talk about the building. We'll talk about the fire spread throughout the actual structure, and then we'll talk about the operations. And we'll look at strategic, tactical, and task. And what you see on the screen right now is the front side of the actual supermarket. It is where the side that faced 35th Avenue, as you can see, a very older building. And on the next slide, we will see kind of a picture of the folks that were outside of the building. the supermarket really was kind of the hub of the neighborhood. So the way it was laid out, and you'll see it here in just a couple minutes, is a supermarket. Next to the supermarket was a clothing store, a barber shop. Around the other side was a bakery. There was a number of little restaurants and cantinas that were around there. But when you look at the neighborhood, it had been there since 1956. So it was built, and then the neighborhood really came around that area, and it really catered to the neighborhood. The unique thing, and for you guys, Adam, and Adam's sitting here, was that when it was built in 1956, it was outside the city of Phoenix. In 1958, they annexed it into the city of Phoenix. So if you think about it from 58 to 2001, what did they not want to do to that building?
Any updates or improvements? They wanted to keep it the same. Just spoke volumes about cost, I'm sure.
Cost, and what was the other thing that we get a lot of questions about, and anything else? If I update the building, what did I have to do to the building?
You got to do the code.
You had to do the codes and stuff, and exactly. So, you know, if you look at that building, and if it was here today, it would have a sprinkler system in it. If you look at the exiting requirements that were in the building, a lot of the different things that would normally be built into that structure weren't into there. And part of it is over the years, they never wanted to take on that expense to be able to update that building and do those things. And so there was no sprinkler system that was in there. Another issue as you go forward, and it's right there in the left side of the photo, was the main door for going in and out of the building. And one of the issues in the neighborhood really had to do with people shoplifting. And so one of the things that they did is really controlled access and egress in and out of the building, to a point where they would steal shopping carts. And so they had put up stuff that you couldn't get the shopping cart out of the building. So again, when you now look at on their side of stopping shoplifting, it worked very well. But when we talk about making access to a building or leaving a building, now you start to see some of the challenges that went into it. The building itself was about 22,000 square feet. It had a 20-foot ceiling on the inside of it. Under the bottom side of the ceiling were those old, like 1 foot by 1 foot acoustic tiles. And it was built onto a framing of drywall that was on the bottom of it was steel beams and columns that were inside there, and about a 4-foot attic space inside the actual supermarket. The lighting was built into the ceiling that was up there. And as a typical supermarket, you came in the front door, your registers were across the front portions of it. And if we look at the next slide here is kind of a layout, and we'll kind of go through this, and it's a little bit hard not having a pointer, but I will kind of show you as we go through here that the layout of the supermarket, while it was very traditional, there was also some challenges with that layout in there. And I think Joe's going to pull it up here in just a minute for being able to do that. But alongside the supermarket then, which was 22,000 square feet, there was also to the south of it were a couple occupancies that was about 6,000 square feet. So we're just under 30,000 square feet. And I guess if I ask you all out there, and today if you want to, we have the ability to, Joe or Jason, you can help me. We can either text in some questions, or we have the ability to text to 916-616-2491. And that we have those to put in there, or you can chat on the Zoom. And I would like to see us interact in this one as much as we can. But if you look at the layout of a supermarket, and I know that we've talked about it before, typically, if you think of the layout of the supermarket, you walk in the front doors, and what do you run into right away?
Yeah, cash registers and customer service area.
Yeah, cash registers across the front of it, the customer service area. They kind of control people for coming in and out of a store and for being able to move around. Most grocery stores, what's dead center in the grocery store?
Freezers.
Yeah, Yeah, frozen food is,
Refrigeration.
frozen foods, everything is in the middle of it and across that area. And it's all strategic for somebody who has figured this out on how do we get people to shop and do things, and they've figured that portion of it out. But it's important, I think, as we are as firefighters, and we'll talk more when we get in the back half of this, is that our size up of buildings and knowing those layouts really plays into a lot of what we do day in and day out. If the freezers are in the middle, what's across the back of the store?
Typically have your butcher shop or
Yeah,
bakery.
all the meat. You put the meat in the back of it. It makes them come in. They have to, if you just want to buy a pound of hamburger, you're going to have to walk through the whole store to be able to get back there and there. If that's in the back, what's to my left?
Bread or vegetables, fruit.
Fruit and vegetables and
breads
breads
on the other side.
is all in there. What's on the opposite side for our drinking friends?
Bread and alcohol.
Bread and alcohol. Yeah, you go to the other way, it's the alcohol is lined up over there. Southwest Supermarket was laid out exactly like that, is that you came through the front door uniquely. Today almost every supermarket will have a door on the left and the right side, and that you walk in. This one just had one entrance in. As you came through that, you had your cashiers, frozen foods down here in the middle. You had the meat area in the back of it. Vegetables were to the left, and over to the right was alcohol and meat and stuff. Typically, when do you see, or where do you see then the stock room?
Usually in the back.
Yeah, usually straight through. If you would look at the Southwest Supermarket, you would normally have gone straight through to where that north marker is, and that would have been the back of the supermarket. The unique thing about this building was that it was built in two parts. The supermarket portion of it to the east was built first. And then a few years later, they came back and did the addition that ran all the way to the west. And it really finished off the rest of the block. And so, design side, you can see how big that second half was.
Oh, yeah.
But the unique thing about this supermarket is if you can see where the little fire is down there in the corner, is that right there, right above there as we went to the north, that was the storage area for the whole supermarket, was in that area. So typically what you would see to the back was in the store and to the left, and that was the storage area that was there. Right there next to the E, you can see that there was an Ace Hardware, and then Casa Del Rosa was a clothing store that's just to the front of the store. So you had the entrance to the supermarket is about where the E was, and then you had the Ace Hardware, and actually right, which would have been north of the Ace Hardware, there was a barber shop. So there was another set of doors there. And then you had the Ace Hardware, and then you had the Casa Del Rosa, the clothing store that was there. From the front, when you looked at this, what do you think that it looked like as far as the Ace Hardware?
Strip mall.
Yeah.
I'm thinking strip mall, you're looking at multiple businesses in a row, yeah.
Multiple businesses you can see around there. But really from the front of it, your expectations would be those businesses extended all the way to the back.
Yeah.
And so when you can see where we're going to start the fire at, and where there was some confusion on the fire ground. And, one of the things that I think that we are better at today than we ever did before, and especially I know here at Metro, is our ability to get that 360, to get that information and what is happening really on the backside of that structure. This one here, because of the size and now leaving residential and going commercial, it isn't until very later into this thing that we are able to get to those locations, but we will kind of figure that out as we go through. Joe, can you go back just one? Well, actually, you know what? You're fine right there. Let's go back to it again.
Well, I think you just reiterated not only the importance of the 360, where we've had some growth and improvement, not just from this fire, but in the region, talking about Intel. You did a great job at walking us through really a grocery store's fire load and what that looks like. And we've talked about that because when you paint the picture, the fire load up front just is not there. Mm-hmm. So where are we having the problems and where are we having fires?
Yeah, so, and that back portion of it there.
Absolutely.
That back portion. Now, another unique thing about it, about where the S is down there, is where the power supply comes into Southwest Supermarket. Later on, we'll show a picture that has 3 transformers that were right on the back of the area right there. Right above where we see the fire at, that storage area, if you remember, I said the fire occurred on a Wednesday. It was just before 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Guess what happens on Wednesday? As far as the stock.
All comes in, all goes out.
Delivery.
Yeah.
All the deliveries come in on Wednesday. That back half of there, if you remember, I said in the front half, we have ceilings that are about 20 feet tall. The back half is open, so there's no ceiling in the back half of it back there. It's open to the roof. There's 2 doors in the back. On the left of the fire, there's a roll-up door. That's probably, about 6 feet by about 8 feet in size. To the right of the fire is a man door that goes into the back area right there. Another one, unfortunately, because of the demographics there, one of the problems they had were people coming around at the back when they were having groceries delivered and people stealing stuff. And so inside the back was not just a wide open area, but there was a number of cages that were back there. So there was a cage just inside there that was filled with alcohol. And then they had built a kind of an internal fencing for that was in there. Then a little bit farther up, there was a few more areas that they would lock stuff in and have it in there. But on Wednesday, in the day of the fire, that back of it is filled all the way across in there. On the side that would have been the east side, if Joe can go back to it, of the rear of it, right where the Ace Hardware was and the other store there right above the fire, they had a bunch of really elevated platforms where they were storing stuff. And so they stored all the old Christmas decorations and everything back there. So I'm trying to paint a picture is that back storeroom is just loaded and absolutely packed. It's not very uncommon to what we still see today is that there's an aisleway that was in there. They use that aisleway for their ability to move in and out of there. But they have absolutely packed that thing from one end to the other. Where the fire is back there also is a dumpster that is on the back patio. Next to the dumpster is a cardboard compacting machine. So everything that came in cardboard is compacted. And you can guess, once we've compacted the cardboard, where did we stack it at?
Right next to it.
Yeah, right next to the building. Right next to that is a number of bread. I don't know, would you call them carts, crates, and then the milk crates and everything are all stacked back there. So again, the back part of the studio or back part of the grocery store is filled with product. And then as soon as you get to the exterior, it is all of our garbage is all stacked up down there. There's a little alleyway that is about where the fire is that runs through there. So access to that back area is very limited. And then as you can see, the clothing store kind of sticks out. And so this is going to play in when Battalion 3 gets on scene. Being able to see really what is going on back there is really difficult because of the obstacles of being able to see around the corner and see what's happening.
Do you have a question, Joe?
Chief, I have a question from Captain Alecman. He's wondering if adherence to fire codes at that time and locale for a building built in the 50s was voluntary or mandated.
So for that time, unless you did some major renovations to the actual occupancy, it was enforced, but you were still held to the code for this one for 1956 when the building was built. When they annexed them into the city, what they did was give everybody a waiver, so they didn't have to bring their actual occupancy up to code until you did some major renovations on it. It's pretty common in Phoenix as you drive around in Phoenix, there's just a number of areas, especially in the older parts, where you'll have a huge mobile home park. And there'll be absolutely no water supply inside the mobile home park, or they'll have a little, a 2.5-inch yard hydrant that is in there. And as long as they didn't do anything when they're annexed, part of the deal is that's what you can do. There's still places that have their own wells and septic systems. Nowadays, because the cost of the property has gone up so much, really when you see changes happen is either they're going to update the store to meet the kind of the area, or they've sold it and they just come in and just, raise it. And it's worth more money, the property, than it is to have a mobile home park on there.
That's not a big motivator to do any updates if you're
No, not at all. And so fire prevention would go out. They had, I don't have it written down, but they had done a general inspection of the store. Oh, gosh, I'm going off my memory, but I think it had been within 2 years. The typical things that they had found were some exits that were blocked and some signs that weren't working and things, but generally it met the code requirements for that time. Thanks for the question. Let's go back one more time to the kind of the diagram of it. If you look at the building, and one additional factor is if you look at where the S is, the wind the day of the fire could be going any which way you can pick for it to come. But which way is it going to go today? Yeah, it's blowing out of the southwest, really blowing towards the back of the store right there. Talking to the manager afterwards and stuff is that the effect that it has would be that it almost pressurized the back of the store. Is that the man door back there and the roll-up door had no sealant around it whatsoever. And so when the wind would blow like that, it would just pressurize the back of the store. And then really on the south side back there on both sides of it, the scuppers to the roof, and then there was actually some vents up at the top of the roof that would pressurize really the back half of that thing. We got a little mic change that is happening here real quick.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, stand.
Do we have any other questions that have come in?
So even with that, Chief, with the clothing store sticking out there, I mean, it's just capturing all that whole flow in that area. I mean, you talk about fire flow or flow path, it's lining up. You can already tell where this is going to go a little bit.
Oh yeah, and you said the Swiss cheese analogy of it. You change the wind, you change the day of the fire, you change any of those things on there, and it's a whole different incident. And I think, again, we'll talk about it again a little bit here, is that we've had a number of external fires here probably in the last month.
One sounded, people listening.
Yeah, Charlie had one the other day. Yeah.
Italian 7, yeah.
And everything on the backside of that building was blocked, and there was just no way for the fire to make access into there.
Let me get smoke inside.
So I think we've gone through, if you go back, Joe, into that last one again, I think we've gone through there. We've kind of had the layout. A question is north to south along that wall separating the two occupancies. That was a solid concrete wall. The walls were 8/8-16 blocks. Every 4 feet they had reinforcement that was built into it. The Ace Hardware and the clothing store, there was access from the front. The clothing store did have a little bit of a door out the back of it, but most of the access was from the front. Engine 14 did a pre-plan, and C-Shift had done a pre-plan. They went over there. They had two options. They could do the east building or the west building. They chose, of course, to do the west building first. And so they had gone over there and gone through the west building, and in a little bit that'll come into when we're describing the deployment of companies. Their plan was to come back and do the east side. Again, dating myself, most of our pre-plans that we had at that time were carried in a 3-inch binder. Companies would have their first due ones. One of the other unique thing, not really in 14s, but everywhere around there is just a ton of apartments. And so a lot of your pre-plans had to do with apartments, apartment numbers, best access, what's my ability to get in and get out of here. So they had gone there, but they really had not done the pre-planning of this side of the store versus the other side of the store. I don't know if I have anything else on that portion. You guys have any questions about the store?
So, and you can see that the yellow line, the bolded yellow line, and that part of the structure, like you said, is the initial building, right? I mean, it was separate, and then everything else was added. So there's really the store itself is its own building per se, and so that compartment is pretty well defined. And
Yeah,
the other ones they're separate.
Yeah, so they had built the one to the right or to the east first, and then they had built the west one second. Down to the south, there's a restaurant, a couple other places. There was a place that sold tires that were there. And so there was just a little alleyway in between the south and east markers to get to the back.
Okay.
The next one there, we talked about the wind. The fire starts on the exterior, on the back half of the grocery store. In 2000, it was definitely known as an arson fire. It was started on the back portion there. In 2010, so 9 years later, it was identified. It was actually a young kid that had been caught in the store shoplifting and then had left the store and had gone out there and lit the back half of the area there on fire. So it was a arson fire. It started on the back patio there because of the really the building construction, the wind that day, the amount of fuel is in there. Joe, if you go to the next one, it extends. We know now today it extends into the back of the area there really quickly. And now what you're seeing there is a little bit more detail. And you can see the two doors at the bottom, the fire on the exterior. And then when I described inside of there, they had built little rooms. So as we move up from the bottom, really the first 3 or 4 on the left side and the right side are just little storage areas where they would lock things up inside there. So it's not a separate room. It doesn't go all the way to the ceiling. It really was there just to keep, protect their stuff. And then as you move up, you see the second fire. Right above there is the gap in between the grocery store and the back. And there's 2 areas we'll talk about. One was a meat preparation area that is up to the left, and that was a butcher shop area that was inside there. Right above that fire, that second fire up, was an area where they had vegetable prep. And so they would bring, it's a pretty good size area in there where they would get vegetables ready, because as you just go above there into the grocery store, you'll see those 4 trays, and those were all just that fruit and vegetable area. So they use that for going in and out. You had a prep area. Right above the Ace Hardware was a barber shop, but also above there is in grocery stores back in the day was a second floor. And that second floor up there was their office. They had ability to look over to the front portions of it. There was some office space that was all the way across there. But another thing was, as I said, was that there was no attic space in the back half down there where the second little fireball is. There was 2 holes.
No drop ceiling.
No drop ceiling.
It was exposed, fire going straight up into the structural members, and then lateral spread underneath that drop ceiling.
All the way across there.
Yep.
Yep. There was a 4 foot by 4 foot hole.
Oh, yeah.
That went directly from the back into the attic space to the front. And when we talk about fire spread, these are some things that we learned afterwards, and we'll just say it is that fire had already spread into the building and was spreading into the attic way before we identified it as a department where that fire was at that time, and that it was spreading into the attic spot. Joe, what do you have?
Chief, I just had a quick question. Someone wanted to know the alpha side. They just want to be reoriented to the alpha side of this building.
So east would be alpha side. So that would be the front doors. Right above where the E is would be the alpha. That was the door in and out of the store. You can see across the front there where the cashiers were. You can see how they had it built where they really managed people coming in and out of there.
For sure.
All the way across there then were the aisles with the butcher area to the back. And then as you go in from the east side, so you would go, I'm going to screw it up. Is that
Bravo.
Bravo?
Bravo's where the fire originated.
Yep. So on the Bravo side and is coming in. And the other things is that between the back of the supermarket, so on that Bravo wall, there were the old plastic hanging drapes.
Oh, yeah.
Those real heavy ones.
Gotcha.
So you could push them and go through there, but they had those that were hanging down in there because of the air conditioning and everything else all the way across there.
Because that's the code.
That's exactly.
You don't see those anymore. What happened?
You don't see those a lot in there anymore at all. So when we talk about the fire exterior, burns to the interior, burns across there, 4 by 4 foot hole. And actually what it was is they had redone the AC units, and they had put some units on the roof, and so that just had been left open. So there was a direct shot right into the attic space of the supermarket.
Gotcha.
Then all the way
What was the
across.
first?
And wind pushing it.
Wind pushing.
Wind pushing it. So the
That's all
fire
pressurized.
originated on Bravo, and probably a good opportunity to say this so we can get it out of the way. You would have called that the south sector.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'm still calling it the south sector.
I
I
just
don't know
got a
where
big-
you're going with this.
we
but-
just got a big smile, though, and the conversation is going to flow now, because now Chief Harmers is a lot more relaxed because we're talking Phoenix language.
Yeah.
Sector. But for ease of the conversation, I think everybody really wants to know is the fire originated on the Bravo side of this supermarket,
Mhm.
which had a roll-up door and wind constantly hitting against that today.
Exactly. And then a man door right next to it that was as open as that roll-up door.
So just for the path and how it traveled, was there any indication of how it actually got in? I mean, that back wall being what it is, was it going through those
Right through the
access?
doors.
Went
So
right
one
in
of the
there.
things, and people often ask at the end of the NIOSH report, there is a thing on there about having the community interact with the fire department on arrival and stuff. So what had happened is if we go back to the drawing, the manager is told by somebody on the alpha side, comes in the store and says, hey, there's a fire in the back on the loading dock. And so he calls 911, leaves, walks through the grocery store, down through the vegetable area, goes to those slats, opens the slats, and the smoke is already filling the back half of the supermarket.
Gotcha.
So we know very early on that there's a fire that's coming in there. He walks back up, tells people to leave the store that there's a fire. There's no signs of fire in the store, tells people to get out. He leaves the store. Initial companies are arriving on scene, does not interact with them, goes across the street, and then watches the fire from over there. So when we started interviewing people and going through, it was identified very early by the manager and other people that were there that the fire was in the building, possibly even before we arrived at the
Golden
building.
nuggets of information that,
Yeah, and so in the thing there, you'll see in the final report was how do you get, the community to engage in your arrival on scene there. Any other questions or anything for you guys?
I think you're going to cover it. Well, what's the initial response for a commercial structure like this from you
I
guys?
think we're going right there next. I think we're
Nice
going right
segue.
there
I
next.
anticipate a
You
question
were
from
very
everybody on
good.
that. Yeah.
So if we go to the next slide, we've kind of gone through the fire. It's all the way into it burns up into the supermarket, and we'll follow that more. On the next slide, I believe, is the initial dispatch. So right now, what you're seeing is from the south looking north, or really the Bravo side of the structure. And so you can see the pickup truck there on the left. To the right isn't actually the store. It's the store that we're south of there. And then up a little bit farther, kind of the tan building that is up there is the actual supermarket. There was a small little driveway that went through there. You can see the power source that is coming into the back with the electrical.
right there, yeah.
You can see one of the doors on the back of the supermarket. The roll-up door is on the other side of it. And this actually was a guy that was out, and of course, again, now we're dating ourselves again. Compared to today's time, we were very limited to about 3 or 4 pictures. And then it went from there until, as I said, it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon, video from a helicopter from the news media that was above. But we really don't have a lot of photos from the beginning of it. But he was an auto adjuster, turned around. He snapped probably about 3 shots that we were able to get. And you can see already that it is on the back side there. You've got that is right where the compactor was, the dumpster and everything, and it's taken off. The initial call, Adam, for what you said was that the initial call came in as a dumpster to the rear of the building. They had, it's another one of those that we talk about, is that cell phones are obviously, we have cell phones, but not everybody. Dispatch nowadays pretty much knows that if it's a working fire or not a working fire by just looking to see how many phone calls am I getting on these things in the response. They had just a few phone calls in the very beginning of this dumpster to the rear of the building. Engine 14 would normally been the first due company to this event. Engine 14 is out of service. The engineer had taken the engine down to get they have a brand new engine. They take it down to get some repairs. So engine 14 is out of service. Engine 24 is dispatched on the call. Engine 24 is another mile west of this event and then about a quarter mile north of where this is at. So they're a little bit farther away. They're dispatched on a dumpster fire to the rear of the supermarket. Again, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They load up, they're heading out. the exact same time, there was a hazmat call that was on the west side of Phoenix. And so it was west of this event. And they're coming back, and they're probably about, oh, shoot, I can't remember exactly now, maybe about 3 or 4 miles away. Battalion 3 sees the smoke coming up, calls dispatch and says, hey, do we have anything? They said, yeah, we're dispatching a dumpster fire to the rear of the structure. He says, hey, I can see it from where I'm at. Go ahead and balance the call. So back in the day, back during this time, what you would get would be 2 engines and a ladder, or 2 engines and a truck company and 1 BC. It was called a 2-in-1. We sent a 2-in-1 on almost most building fires. A first alarm was 4 engines and then 2 trucks and 2 BCs. Later on, when we look into this, we'll talk more about front loading the incident and how many units that we send on it. So he identifies that. The hazmat unit is a support unit. The engineer that's driving that, really what he does is he just tags along with the hazmat company. He sees it. He also calls and says, hey, I see this thing. He's a little bit ahead, so he gets off the freeway and starts heading over that way. So engine 24 is dispatched. They dispatch engine 21, ladder 24, rescue 25. Rescue 25 is what we call ambulances in Phoenix. So a rescue is not a heavy rescue. Those are called squads. There are no squads at this time in the system. Rescue 25 is an ambulance, 2 firefighters, SCBAs on there. Very similar to what we do here as firefighter medics. They are usually tied up with their own company, or they are tied with a company for accountability on the fire ground, but are used for deployment on the fire ground. Okay. Rescue 25, each call gets an ambulance with a working fire. On this one, because the Battalion 3 had balanced it, they get the ambulance to come with them. Engine 14 is coming back. The engineer hears the call go out, knows that they're right around the corner. She calls the station to the crew and says, hey, there's a dumpster fire. They just balanced it just up the street here at 35th and McDowell. I'll pick you guys up out front. So she pulls up, the crew comes out, they jump on, and the captain hits, much like ours, AOR, and then types in there AU to engine 24. And hits that he's available, then types that. And the portion of this story is the CAD is the exact same CAD that we have here. The CAD recycles and picks them up for an EMS call, which is, I mean, the actual portion of that happening is almost impossible. So he calls on the radio and says, hey, we're already going to the fire, cover us on the EMS call. We're right around the corner. So there was about 3 different times along here that for whatever reason, it didn't want to send engine 14, and engine 14 continued to add on to it. Rescue 21, again, the ambulance 21, engine is dispatched. They add on to the call also and respond with the engine then to the event then as they're going.
So they're coming from quarters, they because of what their normal op is.
Yep.
So 20 years ago for us here, very similar dispatch.
Yeah.
You know, we've grown from there, but very similar dispatch. And we used to, at that time, was calling our medics rescue ambulances.
Okay.
So very similar. Yeah.
Very similar.
Engine 14, good decision making, even with some obstacles being thrown at them from CAD or not being assigned or to the pick on that call.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, the ability, and I know we talk a lot about it here, about adding on to calls and being able to make a difference and covering calls and balancing between, you know, I'm dispatched to a known code versus maybe a BLS call and being able to make that decision.
Sure.
Using your medics as manpower. Phoenix is staffing wise, the companies are all staffed with 4. But still having your medic there allows that company officer to function more really at the tactical level and let them do the task level. Crews train, much like here, train together all the time to be able to do it. The challenge could be, I have a patient, I'm gonna have to figure out how to transport it, but we really overcome that pretty easily most of the time. Or we add another ambulance or a medic onto the call to be able to do that. And so having the people on the front end of this is, I think, is so important in what we learned in the lesson of how do we deploy on the front end. So the initial, next one there, Joe, is the operations and calling it critical fire ground factors. Engine 24 arrives on scene. They are able to not see the dumpster, but are able to see it toward the rear. And they also know now we have electrical lines that are involved. They call for the electrical company to respond. Normally, it would be a very delayed response. Actually, on this event, the electrical company responds really quick and are very early on into it, is able to cut the power down to there. But they have an exterior fire. They know that they're not sure if they have extension. They've already balanced the call for that portions of it. They're going to pull up. There's a plug that is out on 35th Avenue. So they hook to that plug and they pull up kind of as far as they can. And then they extend their lines down the alley to the back side there. Their initial attack, if you look at 24s, is what am I going to do to be able to get into the store here? So again, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you have a open supermarket. So we know that we've now gone from residential to commercial. Older building, no built-in protection in the building, an exterior fire, which is, just looking at the picture, we've got some pretty significant fire right now. And so concerned about what do we have as far as extension into the building as fire. The rescue profile is all the stores are open, all the stores are occupied. From the front side of it, one of the things on engine 24, and I know what we do it here also, is that the engineer and the captain switch positions. There's a captain's test that is coming up. His engineer is going to take the captain's test, and so to give him some time in the front seat, they switch positions. What we learned, though, was that it put the real captain in a bad position, because now he is in a place where, as this thing escalated, trying to pump multiple hand lines, manage his water supply, but also at the same time give direction to the move-up captain that is now went from I'm at a dumpster fire to where I'm now going from a residential commercial possible extension. And in the long run out of this, one of the things that came out as a recommendation is go to the back seat. Let someone else drive. You be in the position, because the captain really found himself in a tough position of, hey, I need to take over as command, and as this thing gets out, and we're rescuing Brett out of the back half of the building, and it was able to do that, but during that little critical first 10 minutes of this event is managing really two different jobs and trying to lead things at the same time.
Yeah, tough spot.
We know that we have to get an all clear and really evacuate, was what I would say, as far as the supermarket and the other buildings that is there. He knows that there's more resources that are coming. And looking at now my initial first, couple minutes of an attack, what can I do to change this fire? On the next picture, Joe, you'll see is Battalion 3 arrives on scene. Battalion 3 is really comes in off of the A side, is away from the building, can see where engine 24 is at, but is really hampered to see the fire or anything else, but can see the actual grocery store. As I said, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you can see that is ladder 24 that is parked out on the street. Actually, I think that is ladder 9, maybe later on in the event. But ladder 24, as they arrived on scene, because now all the cars are trying to leave the parking lot, ended up in a kind of a bad tactical position. Other companies that are coming on, 35th and McDowell at 5 o'clock in the afternoon is just packed with people all the way across there and stuff. And so as much as we talk about apparatus placement and stuff, it can be difficult to be able to do that because of everything that is going on. So he pulls up, assumes command. He assigns 24 as south sector, and then looks at the building. And if you guys, look at that building and you think about, I got a line on the fire, what would be some of the tactical things that you would think about?
Based off what, we're talking about what the hazards are and what we have to deal with
Well, just-
there. So like dealing with getting water on the fire as quick as we can and then getting people out of the way.
Yeah.
Evacuations. And I know
Evacuations.
Hazmat 4 had some of that stuff going on too, which is, we talked about the decision making, which was good, but yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, if you think about that is, okay, I know where the fire is right here. Put my hands down. Instead of reaching out. I know where the fire is, but I don't know where it's going.
Right.
So in my mind, okay, I need to get into the clothing store, the Ace Hardware. I need to be able to get into the supermarket and see what I have for extension. From the point of view of the BC, what he sees right away is that initial water hitting the fire, and you get that nice, you know,
Steam.
some steam. You get a nice little conversion that's coming off of there. Again, the wind's blowing all the smoke over the building at them, so it's kind of hard to see the building. So he's looking at his deployment then is where do I want to deploy companies to? And it's really, what are my four sides of this thing and how do I get on top of that? So in the next slide there, you can see is now our first companies are arrived on scene. Right there is Engine 24 down on what would be the south side or Bravo side. They had that plug out there where you see Engine 21 and Rescue 21. Pulled attack lines around to the backside. They're hampered because of the lines down, but they're able to put water onto that portion of it, put water onto the building right there. Engine 21 arrives on scene, and when Engine 21 arrives on scene, command assigns him to really go in and check for, get me an all clear and check for extension into the two stores that are to the south or to the Bravo side of it. So you have the Ace Hardware and the other store. Rescue 21 goes along with them. They go up, they go inside the stores there. As they make access inside the store, there's no smoke inside there. They go all the way to the back. There's a little bit of storeroom in the first one. They get to the back, they can look all the way to the ceiling. There's no fire extension in there. They leave there, they come out, and they're going to go into the next door as they move up. Engine 14, as we said, had added on to the call. Engine 14 comes up, pulls into the parking lot. Command assigns him to assist Engine 21 for getting it all clear in those areas and check for extension to those stores to the south there or to the Bravo side of it. Ladder 24 arrives on scene. He assigns Ladder 24 to go to the roof and give him a roof report. The two captains, the captain on Engine 21 and the captain of Engine 14, meet, which would be just up a little bit from Engine 24. And the captain's face to face, and the 21 captain says, hey, I've been in here. There's no extension in here. We're going to go to the next one. Why don't you go to the grocery store and see what's going on in the grocery store? And then we will check the rest of these and we'll give an update to command at this point of where we're at. So the captain on Engine 14, he goes up, goes into the grocery store, and as he goes into the grocery store, there's still a few people that are in there that are exiting the grocery store. We know still that the lights are still on in the grocery store, so we haven't made access from the south side yet or killed the power. If you remember, 20-foot ceilings, and just down from the top of the ceilings, there's a little bit of smoke up there. So there's just a little bit of smoke at the top of it. He walks in, he walks all the way to would be Delta, so all the way to the top of the store, making sure that the aisles are clear. He walks back down, and about the time he's walking down, he hears Engine 21 communicate with command that they've got an all clear on the structures to the south, and that they've gone to the rear of those structures and checked for extension, and there's no extension into the building at this time. So Battalion 3 is out in front, and if you think about progress reports, and you're sitting there, you're seeing what's going on there, you know that we're waiting for the electrical company to respond to kill power back there. But one of the things that in his place is that now you're starting to get something positive. Hey, we're inside, we've got it all clear in these, and we've checked this portion of it. We don't have any extension into the building. 24s, you can see parked there. They take a hand ladder, they go across to the front side of it there, throw the hand ladder. They're going to the roof. They have not made the roof yet as they're processing across there. Engine 14 comes down. They walk to the store. Now we're walking towards the Bravo side of it. Again, it's just some light smoke and haze hanging across the top of the ceiling. They come up to those slats that are hanging there, open up the slats, and realize now on the back side there, this whole back room is filled with smoke. Not a lot of heat, but a lot of smoke that is back inside there. Engine 24, about the same time, is now making access in from the south side and reports to command that, hey, we're encountering some fire inside the building. We're just now making access into here. Engine 14 comes back and says, hey, we've made access on the store side of it, and we're in the back of the store, and there seems to be smoke in the back of the store. When 14 went in there, no smoke that's inside there. People are leaving the store. So very common is that they're not pulling a hand line in. They're really just going in to check for extension inside there. They report that and say, hey, we're going to go back outside and pull a hand line to the interior of the store. Engine 3 and Rescue 3 arrive on scene. They had added on to the call, and command assigns them to meet up with Engine 14 and assist with the deployment of hand lines into the store. Engine 3 lays a supply line into the parking lot there, and you can see where they're staged at that location right there. Now with 2 reports, command says, hey, you know what, something's going on here. He still has a lot of smoke, and he balances it to a first alarm at this point to see, hey, I'm going to run out of resources pretty quick. I want to see what's going on. Engine 14 and Engine 3 meet at the front of the store on the Alpha side there, right by the E. So now you have the company members off Engine 3, which is, again, a 4-person company. Engineer stays out along with the 2 firefighters off of Rescue 3. And then all 4 members of Engine 14, along with the engineer, make access into the building. And as you can see, they ended up pulling 2 hand lines to the interior of the building. One of the things that in the fire service, and we get away with it a lot, is you never want to be what with your hand line?
Opposing.
Yeah. And we'll come back to that one. Well, you don't want to be too small, but you never want to be short.
You want to be,
you never want to run out of line. Every time that I've ever tried to not extend a line, it seems for some reason you can get about 6 feet to the door, and you're trying to angle the line in, and whoever extended their line, as they come up, you say, hey, give me your line. And they're like, oh no. So both companies, if you look at there, both companies end up extending 1 3/4 lines. So instead of 150 feet, both companies extend them. So you have 2 lines that are 300 feet long. So we end up now with almost 600 feet of hose on the ground, in which when we're going to try to leave the building, you can see what the challenges are going to be when we try to leave the building and out of the occupancy. So they extend their lines back into there. They extend them back towards that area. And you know, we talk a lot about fire conditions, conditions changing rapidly on the fire ground. And I think for a lot of us, we're very used to it. And we've all been there before in a residential house where, man, the heat just banks down. You have 0 visibility inside that structure. We put some water on it. Conditions change quickly, kind of cool. We ventilate the structure. But think about this, is that they were inside. And if you remember, I said the smoke was about 3 feet down from the ceiling. During their time that they're in there now, going out and getting a line and taking it back into the building, smoke conditions change that whole box is now filled with smoke. So
22,000 square feet.
22,000 square feet, volume, filled with smoke. No heat inside there.
Right.
So if you think about when we leave a structure, when do we leave a structure?
When it gets too hot.
When it gets too hot. Or command tells us. Command tells us, but we don't leave a structure because of smoke.
Yeah.
But think about the size of this fire, that it filled that box, 22,000 square feet, filled with smoke in really a rapid period of time of them going in and then coming back in and being able to do that and deploying their lines back into there. They deploy their lines all the way back to that vegetable prep area. They're confronted with fire just on the other side of it. That whole back half of the supermarket is involved in fire. They're putting water on the fire. They're getting good conversion. Conditions, visibility is really 0 inside the store. One of the things I didn't mention was over the last, we said it was, I think 56 was when it was done there, is that over the time, I hope I can read that.
It was a question. It was the same question I was leading up to, because if I'm in command right now, Chief, before you said the smoke conditions changed, I'm actually feeling pretty good about this, right? So I've got all the occupancy of life cleared. I've got all clears. I've got really no significant fire findings. Water application, I'm seeing some conversion going on. And extension, I'm getting cleared from everybody. Until you said they pulled some lines and saw the difference. But up until that point, if I'm command, I'm feeling pretty good about this, except for I need somebody on the roof to really give me a roof report to find out if those things are matching up, right?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of salivating for what is the roof of this thing look
So
like?
a couple things happen here at the same time. You guys are jumping ahead of things, but it's fine. Is Battalion 3 realizes that, hey, I'm not sure how, but somehow this is connected. So he calls both companies on the south and in 14s and says, hey, somehow this is connected. So be careful of opposing lines. I'm not sure yet what's going on, but there's opposing lines somehow that is inside here. I'm not real sure what's going on. 24 makes the roof. They get to the point there, cut a hole, and they report, hey, we've got fire from the roof. Is that we're in here. Now, the reports back from companies and follow-up reports, and this is pre-cans, you know, but the follow-ups are, hey, we're getting water on the fire right now. Going all the way back to the beginning of it, the reality is what?
That they don't know they have it inside.
Well, and that hole that was up there, that thing was running the attic.
The whole
attic.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
That thing was
ventilation hole
running.
was already up there.
It was getting it
That
going
drop
up there.
ceiling's concealing the fire and keeping the smoke from hovering around.
Well,
At
so
that point.
Yeah, and then the other piece you mentioned about the number of thermal imaging cameras, I know that comes into play at some point.
Yeah.
It's not knowing
There's
what's
zero
going
on this one, yeah.
above there. Yeah.
You're not knowing what's going on. The typical thing of what drives me out of a structure is heat. Is
not
I don't
happening.
have heat.
Nope.
The guys that come in from the backside have tar that's dripping on them and it's hot back there, but very what you would expect to see. I had an exterior fire extended in. I'm putting water on there. I'm getting conversion there, and they're like they're moving their line and they're falling over stuff because all those boxes now have fallen down, and so they're moving across those and trying to move forward. Now the other portion of it, go ahead, Joe.
Chief, I have a question and a comment. First, the comment from Rick Barty says it's important to mention that they brought the hand lines in dry, and then when they became charged, they became spaghetti and all tangled up. And then I have a question from Joe Schmidt.
That's a good one. We should talk about it a little
bit. Ineffective or not done until late?
Ventilation was appropriate. I think the challenge with ventilation was the ability to go from residential to commercial, and then the time that it takes to be able to do that. So, as I said, they're parked on the street, so they had to be able to take a hand ladder. There was a roof difference between the Ace Hardware and the other part, which was 6 feet. So they brought another, we call it a banger ladder, just a straight ladder that they put up there and was able to get up there. Perfect. So it was appropriate. It, you know, in a portion of when I look at ventilation is the activity portion on the task level that happens. Well, a key portion of ventilation is that information that command receives. And the follow-up report of what is going on, what do you see on the roof, what are some of those other things? Because there was additional vents that were on the roof that had smoke coming out of them and things that was not relayed to command. And so when we talk about command reports a little bit later, I think a lot of times on residential, we'll say, hey, we vented the roof, we're getting good conversion, or we got 2 vent holes, and you're sitting in command and you can see it. The ability to describe, do I have fire, do I have smoke? Is it increasing, is it decreasing? Do I see a change in the smoke, in the production of the smoke portions of it? The crews on the interior reported seeing, or from the back half of it, started to get a lift. I mean, they had a nice, I think they ended up with like a 6x6 hole in that area and got a good lift, kind of a release back there. Now we know, though, at the same time, what we were doing was giving the fire just a ton of air. And later on, when we take out the front windows, what we've learned through all the research is
just drawing it.
It was, well, all we were doing is putting no water on it and the fire was just taking off. As Chief Partee said, is that we extend the lines in, they charge the lines. 2 things that happen on most apartments is almost every coupling leaked inside there. The floors had been waxed probably every weekend for the last, 60 years or whatever. No, that wasn't 60 years, last, 40 years. And then that area where I said there was 4 trays, there was one tray that had about 1.8 million pinto beans that spilled. So inside the actual supermarket, it went from walking on the floor to what it felt like you're walking on
Marbles.
ice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just became slick as could be all the way through there, all the way through the backside of it. So if you go back to the, let's go to the next one then.
I would say somewhat of a heads up decision though, because we talk about that here is, how deep are you going to go into the structure? Are you in the right location? And if you go in with a charge hose line, are you going to actually make any 90-degree turns, and how many until you stop forward progress? So uncharged hose lines, a good thought process, making the shift from residential to commercial, but what are the problems that encounter with doing that decision?
Well, and then the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really easy to advance it. Now as I'm advancing deeper into a structure, how do I do that and manage that extension? So taking one line, charging it, and having 2 companies advance that into a position versus now we have multiple lines on top of each other.
Sure.
Managing the corners.
Managing the corners and everything else, trying to be
Well,
able
then
to
the
get back out of here.
Spaghetti mess if you had to get back out trying to find
And
it.
in a minute we will. We will.
I'm good at jumping ahead.
No, that's
I
fine. Joe, if you go to the next one there, interior conditions. Again, remember I had said we started off with a couple shots of exterior. You can see in the bottom of it down there is engine 24. The bottom of the picture right under arrangements, that would be on the Bravo side.
They're parked next to the clothing store there.
Right next to the clothing store. You can see how the little alley. Now straight back in there was where the dumpster and everything was in the back of it. You can see the little offset that went into there. The grocery store is about where interior conditions are all the way across there and all the way up to there. Inside, we know we have a working fire that's inside the structure. It has started in the back and is extended into there. Smoke conditions are down to the floor. We have very little visibility that's inside the actual store. Heat conditions in the back where they went in, yeah, it's hot back there, but nothing that you wouldn't expect or that would drive you out of the building. But one of the biggest things that you see is just the arrangements. Command has really got a good feeling now of what the arrangements are inside of here. They're connected. It's not getting any better now. Battalion 1, which would be like equal to what we would call the shift commander, now has arrived on scene. They have some face-to-face about, hey, is this, Adam, you started talking about it. We've got it all clear on the structure. We've been here now operating for a while. While conditions and some of the reports we're getting from interior or the extension in these buildings portions of it sounded good, what I'm seeing here and what we're seeing from the exterior is not. And so we're at a point where the discussion starts to be about, hey, we're going to call for a second alarm. Let's change a strategy. We're going to go defensive, but we're not there yet. Mm-hmm. But we're already starting to have the decision. On all first alarms, there's a command van that has an engineer that responds. They're setting up across the street. They do what is a move of command, so it's not a transfer. The BC keeps it, but he moves out of his vehicle over to the command van. And so we're at that point tactically of inside here strategically. It's time to go defensive on this fire, Chief, and make a change.
You said, so you've mentioned the arrangements there, and it's on the slide, and the shape of the structure and the building construction. At what point was there an awareness that there was the L-shaped supermarket? Was that, they kept saying this, you're connected somehow. I've heard you say that a few times. Was there still a confusion, or did somebody make that connection and say, oh, this is the storage area of this supermarket and that's the spread? Or
late that night, when they were finally able to put it all together and talk to people and realize that this is the way it is.
Gotcha.
Command, he said, I knew something. Somehow it's all connected. But the ability to figure it out in the moment of what's going on, he really didn't. So as he moved forward, there's other companies that are assigned to, which would be Alpha Bravo, Charlie. to try to make access from the other side into it, try to make access down an alleyway that is over there, not knowing that the whole back side of that building is just all block.
Gotcha.
And the construction that we found out later on, way into the incident, and this is after, right when Brett is actually rescued, they breach a wall back there and stuff, trying to make another point to get into the building. But there is, again, that challenge of trying to figure out some of these things that are happening. You look at just some of the things that we have today as far as Google Maps, and being able to look at a Google map of this building, and you as the command may not be able to look at it, but if you had this on Google Map and you could at least look at it and say, okay, this is kind of what I think I have laid out. All of our maps, back in this time was basically laid off. How do I get there, and where are the plugs?
Thomas Brothers. And
Exactly, exactly.
That's it, yeah.
And that's it. And so the arrangement part of it is known, but it's not. You're not being able to keep up with it.
That's a good. I mean, just for awareness of what's going on, I think some of that is important to recognize.
So on the next slide is the low air alert. Engine 14's crew is together next to Engine 3's crew. They're in that vegetable prep area. They have 2 hand lines in there. They're operating the 2 hand lines. Crews are moving around in there. And when I mean moving around is they're in a small area, but they're off the hand line. And again, when we talk about being off a hand line, I think as our experience increases when we're on the fire ground, the ability to leave a hand line residential and recover from that is we do it all the time. But taking that skill into a commercial building is that they're off the line. Brett tells his captain, hey, I'm running low on air. His vibro alert is going off. He tells him, hey, I'm going to leave the building and head out and get another bottle and come back in. The captain on 14 says, no, hey, let's all leave together as a crew. So he communicates with the captain on Engine 3, says, hey, my crew is leaving. They give the nozzle. The engineer has the nozzle. She gives it to the firefighter off of Rescue 3. The crew gets together. The engineer is in front, and she's heading out of the building. In her mind, the 2 firefighters and then the captain are behind her coming out of the building. The captain gets up, and as he's moving, he falls over what ends up being a pallet of potatoes, falls against the wall, gets up. He's a little bit figuring out, okay, where's the line at? He hears the nozzle, comes back over, gets on the line, and he is heading out of the building with the expectation of the engineer and the 2 firefighters are in front of them heading out of the building. Brett and the other firefighter are up. They walk out in the supermarket, and it's real simple. Instead of making a right turn and following the hand line out of the building, they make a left turn and head back into the back half of the supermarket, back towards where we talked about. We can track probably about 80% of the time, but they leave and go back to where we said the meat area was, in the back half of the supermarket. The crews become separated. The engineer goes out. As the engineer gets to the outside, the crew isn't there and thinks, oh, they went to the utility vehicle to fill up with air, and starts to head towards the utility vehicle. The captain, as he's going across there, he gets not all the way out of the building, but almost out of the building, and he runs out of air. At that time, he disconnects and he makes it the rest of the way out of the front of the building, thinking the crew's in front of me, and all I got to do is when I get out here, I'm going to find the crew in the front of him. And as he comes out of the building, he literally can't find any of his crew. And so he's a little bit, hey, they must be back inside, sees the engineer, and they do a face-to-face at that time that the 2 of them are outside. Where are the 2 firefighters? So the next slide is the first Mayday that comes in. Is that initially we know that the other firefighter, his name is Cy. Cy tries to do a Mayday and does not go through. He tells Brett, they're in the back of the supermarket now, and he tells Brett, hey, I can't do a Mayday. Can you do the Mayday? Brett gets on the radio, does a Mayday, reports as a firefighter is lost in the back of the supermarket. He does not report it as 2 people are in there, but reports is that he is lost in the back of the supermarket, and we'll see some additional stuff here in just a little bit on that. Command communicates with them. This was actually the point where command was ready to go defensive on the incident, and now is challenged with a Mayday, talks to Brett, tells Brett, hey, activate your pass alarm at this point. Where do you think you're at? I'm in the back of the supermarket. We're going to send folks in to be able to get you inside the supermarket at this time. So if you think about the incident, kind of where, Adam, you were going, is that we have gone from exterior fire. Now we know that it's extended into the building. We're in a position now that we want to pull out of the building. Now we have a Mayday, and now we've gone from that, what I would say, normal operation to now we're going into a rescue operation. What do we have to do now to be able to really save the people that we know we have Brett that is inside there? What do we need to be able to do to get in there? Command calls for a second alarm at this point in time now. He assigns ladder 9 and engine 18 to the front of the building for a rescue effort, and he also assigns the companies to the south end, which would be Bravo. Is that we have someone that's lost in the building. Brett identifies himself as Brett Tarver. Over the years, what we had done is like a lot of departments, we had done the Save Your Own training. And we had some folks from Illinois had came out, and the whole department had gone through the Denver drill and a number of other drills on being able to rescue someone out of a building. One of the things that we realized later was, where do you think we did almost all of our drills at?
Houses.
No,
Station.
we did them in the station or the training
Oh, yeah,
ground.
right, okay.
Yeah.
And almost all of them were done on a concrete floor.
Right.
And the thing that we said was that if you go down inside a fire, we're going to do what?
Drag you out.
Yeah, we'll rescue you.
Yeah, we'll just get you out.
Yeah, and
And it worked every time in that
we
environment. Yeah.
We don't leave anybody behind. We will rescue each other. We will never leave you inside of a building. When will you leave somebody?
That's a personal question.
It is.
When will you leave somebody? I can tell you most people, when they truly run out of air or entrapped personally,
So
the
we'll
fight or
talk
flight
about
takes in, and you
Yeah.
really evaluate livable versus savable.
So we'll talk about John Thomason, who was the firefighter on 3. John wouldn't leave him and ends up in respiratory arrest. What we found with other people is that when they thought they were going to die,
Right.
was the point that was going to happen.
When you truly can't breathe, different environment takes over psychologically.
And at
that's
that time.
very personal.
Joe, what do you got?
Chief, I had a comment from someone saying it'd be a good time to deploy the large area rope bag, rig
Ooh.
team, and rig pack. And then I had someone asking, when the Mayday went out, was there radio discipline on the TAC or was it chaotic?
So 2 things is the RIC crews were deployed into the structure. We will talk a lot about large area search bags
Yes.
in the future here, and why I am not a fan of those, and some of the challenges of the bag, and part of it is the ability to use them every single day versus only on emergency, and what happened on that there. So we'll come back to that more as we keep on going on down the road there. So if we go back to there, we know now that Brett, because of his radio traffic changes from where you hear the vibra alert to where he's not on air anymore. He's in the back of the supermarket there. We've got a rescue effort from the front half of the supermarket. Thank you. There's a firefighting plan that's in place to try to reinforce command calls for a second alarm, third alarm. It ends up being 5 alarms in total. At the time, Phoenix every battalion had a safety officer captain assigned to the battalion. And really what they did they would participate in training. They would do clothing inspections and stuff. And so the safety guys on this event, multiple battalions responded to the event. So safety came in and they started building a plan on how we're going to manage accountability at the different sites, and multiple requests for people going in and out of the actual store. On the next one, well, wait before you go to the next one. So we have a plan in place. They're deploying companies in onto the rescue side of it. The firefighter with engine 14 and Brett separate. Brett is moving and he can't keep up with Brett. And so we find out now that they were actually in the butcher area. He goes through some double doors and runs into the crews that were coming in from the south or Bravo. They grab him and say, we have the firefighter and we're bringing him out of the building. Command is sitting out there thinking, oh, we've got Brett, we're bringing him out of the building. At this point, he's ready to go defensive. He does emergency traffic. I want everybody out of the building. We're going defensive. I want to get an accountability and a par on everybody on the fire ground. Brett comes back up on the radio and says, no, don't leave me inside here. I'm still inside the building.
Wow.
So command starts working back through. Who do you have, to the south sector, as you said? Who do you have? Who are you bringing out of the building? And it goes back to, and again, I'm really happy we are going to do the IFF fireground survival stuff. And in there, this isn't unique to us, but in a lot of places where the person that is called the Mayday hasn't ever been identified by name. And the ability to identify that person by name and being able to get them out of the structure. In Phoenix, there was no identifiers other than maybe a marker on your helmet, but names. If you look at the standard today of having our names on our jackets and things like that, this is the case where you're rescuing somebody and thinking that you're bringing the Mayday, who had called the Mayday, and you're actually bringing someone else out of the structure. So command switches back again and goes back again to reinforce back into the building of this plan of where is Brett at inside here. If we go to the next one there, conditions inside the building, as I said, there's a firefighting plan that's in place. So he's reinforcing additional companies for the firefight. We've assigned additional truck companies to the roof for ventilation. One of the things that happened was that the roof had been replaced on this structure, and it was very easy. I mean, you would expect there to be 4 inches of tar and a decking and everything, and probably only had been hot mopped maybe twice. Now, on the other side that we've learned 20 years later was that ventilation fed the fire on the other side of it. So do you want to, I probably have, Jason, another 30 minutes, and then we'll take a break at that point, if that's okay. Our producer says that's okay, so we're moving on then at that point. Engine 14.
You bring up a great point right there, Chief, is that, when we're talking about the shift from residential to commercial, especially in ventilation, even though you said they cut a nice big hole, but we have 30,000 square feet of that box being filled up so rapidly. What type hole do you need to have in there to get lift?
Oh, and I think today what we're learning is that if it's not coordinated with direct water on the fire, all we're doing, because as you can see these windows across the front of the building on the slide right there, we take all of those out. And as we get more into this rescue in a little bit, the whole front half of this store lights off. Yeah. And what we've learned was we did probably the exact opposite. I mean, at the time, it was what we thought was the best thing. What we've learned is that it being a vent limited fire probably would have been better for us, because before long the whole front lights off, and every time we put water on there, it just pushes the fire back to where they're trying to rescue Brett out of the building. As you remember, I said engine 21 and engine 14 had met in front of the building, and they had a conversation, the two captains, and the captain of engine 14 told the captain of engine 21, Brett is about 100 feet into this building, 200 feet into this building, and this is the line he is on. And so let's go to the next one where it says rescue efforts. So engine 21 is a captain, and he has 2 firefighters with him, goes into the building in the front half of the building right there. And they follow the line straight back into the back of the area, and they actually find Brett standing. And as I said, he was 6'4", 289 pounds. Now with a little bit of the confusion, the captain on engine 21 grabs a hold of him and says, hey, are you Brett? He says, yeah, I'm Brett. He goes, come on, let's go. And Brett won't get down on the line. So he reaches up and pulls on him and stuff, and he pulls him down and gets him on the line, says, okay, let's go, and tells his 2 firefighters, lead us out of here. So the 2 firefighters take off leading. He's got Brett, and then he's behind Brett. Brett goes about 6-8 feet. He stands up and turns around. The captain on 21 tries to grab a hold of him. He drags him back into the back of the store and then loses him. Now the captain on engine 21 is off the line. He is now out of air, and he's lost in the back of the store trying to get Brett back out of the building. His firefighters are thinking
Leave
that
him
they're
out.
behind. They end up having to buddy breathe to get out because they didn't have enough air to get back out of it. And so as you can see, air management is becoming bigger and bigger as we move forward. The engine 21 captain hears ladder 9 and engine 18 coming into the building, goes over to them. At this point, the conditions inside the supermarket are starting to fail now, is that we're starting to get fire activity into the front of the supermarket. It's starting to light off. The captain on ladder 9 is a guy named Larry Spano. He turns everybody around. So if you think about it, there's 5 members on ladder 9, 4 on engine 18, and the captain on engine 21. They're heading out of the building, and as there's all this hose line now, so instead of following just a nice straight hose line, it's all the spaghetti that's underneath stuff and everything. They get about halfway, and the captain on ladder 9 realizes we're going back into the building and following the line the wrong way. And it goes back to one of those very simple things. And I remember having the conversation with him, which was reading couplings. And the ability to do that under the worst conditions you can think of, which was, heavy smoke, conditions where you want to get out of a building and you're struggling with it. Fire conditions are going to hell now inside of there, and you're reading these lugs. And he said, probably a month before they had done a drill with the probationary member on doing that, and that was the portion of those really basic skills and how important they were. Now turning around 10 people on a line, or actually 9 people on a line, and getting everybody out of it. And at that point, really the front half of the supermarket, if you can go back to that one there, lights off. During this time, and some more details, engine 3 actually had a moment when they had to try to get a hand on Brett. And we know that he was just hypoxic. His hemoglobin ended up being at like 60% carbon monoxide.
Wow.
And really at somewhere between 10% or 12% is where you start to see some types of an effect. And so because of, I think, his size and his physical capability and everything else, he just kept on moving inside there and kept on moving across there. On the next one there, you'll look from the south side. It was the rescue effort now really focused to the south side of companies coming in. Being able to, they located Brett inside there. There was still a member off of Rescue 3 that was with him. He had run out of air and had become unconscious. And now the rescue effort really focused on the south side and trying to get Brett out of there. And part of the struggles is what we just talked about a little bit ago, which was our past history, our training and our experience was that we could get anybody and everybody out of a structure, and we would just do it ourselves. And so the next one shows the challenges of that back area. And this was the area that they had to transverse with Brett and with John Thomason, who was unconscious, to be able to get out, and he was in respiratory arrest. If you look up in that upper right hand, kind of the center of the thing, you'll see a little square up there. That was that 4x4 foot hole that went into the other part of the supermarket.
So we're looking through the roll-up door right now.
Exactly. You're looking up the roll-up door, so you're looking, what would that be? B to D.
Bravo, yeah. From
Yeah,
Bravo to
you're
Delta.
looking south, looking north. You can see that there was shelving on the other sides that were over there. One of those little caged-in areas is on the left that they had the storage stuff in. And so when the first company got to Brett, he was still in the butcher area, which was very clean. Yep, straight in and a little bit there to the left. It was very clean. They were able to spin him around. At that point, they grabbed a hold of his SCBA. He has his turnouts gear, and as they go to pull him, his SCBA loosens on him. And we really hadn't been taught the technique of being able to connect, between the legs and the buckles and everything. But one of the things that was identified on our SCBAs, and I went and looked at ours the other day just to see what we have, was that it had the connections on them was made for hiking. So what was really nice about them was that you could loosen them, and it was made more for fit. The reality, though, versus a rescue, went back to an old alligator clip. So if you ever look at your SCBA and you're trying to get them undone, you're like, man, this thing, they should be a better way to do it. Is we went to the standard and said, yeah, it's nice that's there, but when you're trying to rescue somebody, what they ended up doing was pulling the SCBA off of them. And so that part that you normally would use, they removed it. And at the time they thought, okay, that's a good thing to remove because we're going to get him out of here right away. Spun him around, they got him to the floor. Once they hit him back there, they said he felt like he was nailed to the floor. And they couldn't move him at that point and would run out of air. They inverted his jacket, pulled his jacket off of him, pulled his shirt off of him. And so everything they were trying to grab was with what gear now. And so they'd pick him up, move him about 4 or 5 feet, and then they would fall down. And then he would fall on top of somebody. And so across the back on the rescue efforts became just a huge part. As I said, the front half of it is now on fire. And so we know we can't go back out the front half. And the concept of a relay rescue came to life right here. And in the end, it took 8 engines, 3 ladders, and 2 rescues to move him all the way across the back half of that supermarket. We ended up additional 12 Maydays of people that got in trouble during that time inside that structure. Now, there are some different ways that they looked at trying to package him and trying to move him from, lifting the body, moving him, trying to get over obstacles. They did everything from a skeds board that was in there. The thing that ended up being in the end was they had a backboard. They brought it in, they put the backboard on there. They lift him up, they would move him. You would move maybe 4 or 5 feet, then you would fall, and then he would fall off it. And there was actually one individual that he fell on top of him. And so they had to get him off of him onto back on the backboard and being able to get him out of there. I think for an organization, the ability to get him out of the building and not have to leave him was really big for the organization.
Absolutely.
The risk that we took, which was the additional Maydays that happened during that time, some of those were people that freelanced. Some of those people were people that ran out of air and then were trying to get back out of the building. But in the end, we ended up transporting 5 additional folks along with Brett to the hospital to be able to rescue him out of the back of the building right there.
What did they, for orientation purposes, Chief, at that point, is that, that's a lot of people going in there. How did they stay oriented to know? We talked a lot about being disoriented once they made contact and knew they were coming out that south side. What did they use to stay oriented?
So they by now they had taken extended hose lines to where he was.
So they're following hose.
And then the rescue efforts were focused from the south side.
Right.
And so there was the safety guys I talked with
Right.
and 2 command officers managed it. And they literally would stand at the door because, the 4 of us or 5 of us would come around the corner and say, we want to get them, we're going in.
Right.
And they're like, no, you're going to stand over here, you're going to stage over here, and built it as a relay and got it set up as, okay, you're going in, this is what we want you to do as far as packaging them, moving them, and knowing that as soon as a certain amount of time, because it took about 20 minutes since that contact to get them all the way out the door, is the next crew would come in and then they would do a handoff to be able to move them and remove them out of the back of the building then.
Okay.
So a relay rescue, the ability to take over, because if you can think of the emotion now, you've got people being treated out there, you've got people that have been inside and have gotten out that didn't think they were going to make it out, that don't want to go back in, and multiple companies, and the whole other half of the store is on fire right now at the same time.
Firefight going on, yeah.
That ends the rescue portion of it. They get Brett out of the building. We transport 5 firefighters to the event. It's a defensive operation and really takes us to what will be the next half of the really our story that we're having today and the incident. Do we have any questions or anything from folks on your side?
Yeah, Chief, I have Chief Barty here again saying that Engine 21 entered on the east side after they had been on air from their other assignment. So they didn't have full bottles when they entered. So he's sure that this is will be part of the air management conversation.
Yeah, we'll talk more about air management. And then if you look at the next slide, what we're going to do is take a break, and then we'll come back and talk about moving forward. And we'll talk just about some of the little things that happened within the department, some of the training goals that happened during there. And then we're going to take and try to apply some of the things that we've learned to what's happening in the future. So what are we going to do for a break? We're going to do a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back for moving forward. All right, welcome back. Thank you for the comments that everybody has sent in. I know that there are definitely a few other details that are in there as we've tried to go through them and trying to keep this within our 3 hours. Our producer has already told us that we were 30 minutes over in the very beginning of it, but good thing he's a firefighter because he can adapt to it for it as we move forward then too. So thank you for those. And again, as we go into the second half, you know, shoot, between the three of us sitting here and you out there, we probably got about another 4 hours worth of stuff. And so we're going to kind of talk post-event and then really applying some of the things through some of our comments and stuff and for being able to move forward. A couple little things, and it kind of goes through this next slide that we're going to bring up, which was moving forward within the department and some of the things that we have today. On the left side there, you'll see that SCBA and talking about air management and how do we manage air, residential versus commercial and stuff. But for a lot of us, we never knew a jacket without the drag device inside of there. And some of the things that we had learned at Southwest Supermarket and being able to move forward was about having things built in. And so the drag devices that we have today comes directly from this event. We went to the NFPA and put it in as a comment during the portions of it. You can imagine afterwards there was a lot of focus on the rescue. Other things is, and we pushed really hard, and I think John Runicki thought I was a little bit crazy when I pushed so hard to be able to get miniature SCB or miniature tick cameras in everybody's hands. For 20 years, we have talked about the ability to see, or if Brett would have had a camera or the company officers, everybody being able to do that, and it's taken time, but we've finally gotten to that point in operations and being able to move forward. But one of the things, and if you look at the next slide here, it talks about training goals. And as an organization, one of the things that became difficult to manage as we move forward was, one, the emotion that happened. And it happened the next day at the kitchen table that C shift was going off work and A shift was coming on, and the comments of, hey, if we would have been there, we would have been able to get them out of there. And shoot, I think it was about a week later, after we had done a debriefing and taking all the crews that were there on site through the building. Actually, Chief Barty was part of the one that put it together and worked on it, was that we took everybody in the whole department. So at that time, I think there was 1,200 members through the building so that they could see exactly what the challenges were to get someone out of it. Quickly realized that all the departments around us also wanted the opportunity to do that. Mm-hmm. And so in 3 days, we literally took probably close to 3,000 firefighters through the building and explained it. And where that really paid off was later when we were going through, them being able to understand it wasn't like the floor that we all talked about at the academy that's all concrete, but here is all of the obstacles you had to be able to overcome. And you go back to the training goals, and I think it's really important. It's one of the things I know that Adam, you and I have talked about, both Adams, is that the goal of 75% of our training should focus on the skills that make us strong firefighters, whether it's self-survival or it's the ability to stay out of trouble.
Decisions.
And I think we all know, though, even if I do everything correctly, I can still get into trouble. So I still need that 25% that if I do get in trouble is how do we function and how do we move forward from there? Because the reality is, if I can keep you out of trouble by managing your air and managing the strategy and looking at the tactical side of it, and then strong firefighting skills, we don't have to use the 25%. Post this event, we did one really big drill, and we recreated Southwest Supermarket. And we did it in 3 separate locations. So there was one north, south, and then central. We had like a bowling alley, we had a restaurant. But what we did is we had, I wrote down my numbers here, 269 companies, and we ran 1,144 firefighters. And we documented and timed every single one of those. And went through and said, okay, we're gonna recreate it. How can we do a better job at rescuing somebody? And it goes back to this one here. What we found was better off staying out of trouble than ever getting into trouble. The drill was set up would be 4 firefighters were inside of a structure. They were in there about 100 to 150 feet inside there. They would be leaving the structure and they'd be 100 feet from the door. And at that time, 2 of the firefighters would be able to make it out of the structure. 1 firefighter would have a problem but be on the line, and one of the other firefighters would be off the line 40 feet away, unconscious with his pass alarm activated. So as the firefighters, the 2 people, and captain, engineer, whatever, would exit the structure, we would send in the RIC team to rescue the members that were inside of there. So 2 people made it out, 1 person's on the line, and then the other person is inside there. And here's just some of the stats of what we found. A RIC team that was ready to go, standing in the street, still took about 2 minutes and 30 seconds to cross the threshold into the building. So you're ready to go, and you think on the inside someone's having a struggle. On average, it took 2 minutes and 30 seconds for us to activate and then cross the threshold. A quick conversation with the crew that is coming out. 100 feet inside the structure and then 40 feet off, it took 5 minutes, 5.3 minutes, so 5 minutes and about 20 seconds to reach the down firefighter. The firefighter that was on the line, it was very easy to connect with him, turn him around and get him back out of the building. The area that was in there was pallets, boxes, things like that that were in there. But what we didn't have multiple hose lines or anything. You just had one line that you would follow. So think about it. It took almost 8 minutes from the time of a Mayday until the time of being able to reach somebody to get them out of the building. So when we talk about air management, or we talk about calling early for a Mayday, when you think you're in trouble, you should call, because the people that are helping you, if you're waiting for that RIC team, is a long ways off to be able to come in. On average, it took 21 minutes to find, locate, package, transfill air, and get a member out of a building 100 feet inside of a structure. So again, I think that we talked about it, and the article was written by my boss at the time. His name was Steve Christ, and he was the operations chief for Phoenix before me. Then he was the executive when I was the operations, but at this time he was the operations, and he wrote the article on it. Rapid intervention isn't rapid. And the ability to build upon the things. Now, when you think about it, we're taking a commercial building, putting you inside the structure. A residential building with shorter distances and more ways to be able to get in and out is different. But if you look at that large building, 21 minutes to be able to do it. On average, I think I wrote it down on here. I forgot I didn't. I think it was 12 firefighters. 12 firefighters to rescue 1 firefighter. And on average, we would have what we would call 5 Maydays or some type of trouble. We also, though, just to put it in context, is considered somebody low on air because we were trying to get better at managing our air at that time. So out of those things, I take that back. 20% of the rescuers had a Mayday, which means they were low on air, but that's about where we're at on that there. If that makes, 1 in 5 of them at that point. And so the ability to have strong skills and stay out of trouble versus being able to get into trouble in there. So one of the questions that came up a little bit ago, Joe, that you had was about rope bags and the use of rope bags. And obviously during this event afterwards, there was a lot of talk about rope bags. I still carry with me today a thing that Dennis Packabush, who was a member of Phoenix Maintenance, just a piece of rope that has 2 knots on it. It's about 4 feet long, and it's very easy to put around your leg, cinch it up, put it around an SCBA, remove people. But there was a lot of things. One of the things that a lot of people carry is webbing. And during the drills, what we saw was that, especially, there was no smoke or heat inside of any of these drills. What we would take is limo tent and put it inside your face mask. So your visibility with a flashlight was maybe 2 to 3 feet. Without it, it was dark, but you had some visibility like smoke. What we found with webbing was that you couldn't feel it. So when you had your gloves on and you were trying to get things around or you were trying to do things, you couldn't feel webbing, where this was about like a 6 mil rope that you could feel the rope and stuff. And so webbing didn't work well. And one of the things when they were rescuing Brett was that the fire in the front half of the supermarket was going, and they would turn on master streams. but it would push all of the smoke and the heat back into the back half. And so people were back there taking off their gloves, trying to get a hold of Brett, and then it would get so hot they'd have to put their gloves back on. So worst case scenario was making sure that you had something. What we found with rope packs was that they got hooked up on everything inside the structure, every corner that you went around, and then they had a tendency to go under stuff, where a hose line will not go under stuff. And then we spent a lot of time, there was a whole group that did research on rope packs and everything. The people that were most efficient were the companies that used them almost every single day. And really there was a heavy rescues that were out of New York and just a few other companies that had used them that were efficient. Rope packs, we found that more people got in trouble using them, and we reverted back to use a hose line because it's so known. We know which way we're going. We can read the things to be able to get out of it and get out of the structure. So a lot of effort went into those things. A lot of things went moving forward. The next couple slides that we have that are coming up is talking about moving forward, and we probably have on the next one 11 different type of considerations and messages of different things that we want to go. If you look at them, we can talk as we go through there. And if any of you folks out there have any questions, it looks like we have about an hour. The size of the occupancy, fire stage, time, how important time was in making decisions on the fire ground, that ability to get into the hazard zone, and then our ability to get out, heat, smoke, structural stability, access, aggression. We talked a lot about aggression, and then our instincts as we move forward. Anything you guys want to add before we kind of leave and go to this next part?
I have a question from the audience.
How come they're texting you directly now?
Oh, yeah. I
okay.
how this works.
I didn't know that was an option.
Did managing the Mayday come from this incident? And if not, what's your thoughts on the managing the Mayday training? We did do that for all of our trucks and rescue right when you came here. That was the first drill you showed up at?
Yeah, there was an individual, Jeff Seaton. I think Jeff was here, and actually I think I saw Jeff was on the line. There was just a number of programs that, yes, came from Southwest Supermarket. And it goes back to kind of what we talked about at the very beginning was, and sharing this today, and you can imagine going into City Hall with the legal department, with Chief Brunacini, and saying, this is what we're going to do. And their fears of sharing the information that could negatively affect some lawsuit or stuff, as they would worry. But we shared those things. I know Jeff and a few folks from San Jose, and I think we hired Jeff and a few that came, and went through all of these things and said, okay, if you were in this position, managing the Mayday, some of the save your own, we worked very closely and still have today a number of members from Phoenix that are IFF master instructors that will come out and tell the story of Southwest and then apply, hey, how do we apply this today into these areas?
I know it went by kind of quickly there, Chief, but I think it's important to recognize the openness and ability to share these things and the amount of impact it had. I mean, we talk about the political considerations thing, but really the commitment of the agency to say, we want to share this so that we can all get better. And the widespread, I know we'll talk about it, but we talk about DRDs and all kinds of things that came from this.
And it was
pretty unheard of. I mean, that was not a normal thing, and still probably isn't. So.
Yeah, it was very, and for the agency, the ability to share and be able to put this out for everybody within the agency, because it just turns you upside down. And I know that people have asked me about different internally here, different things and the ability to share, and pretty much except for personnel problems,
Right. It's open book.
It's an open book. And I think we've done a good job of trying to be able to do that. Yeah. It can be hard sometimes on the members though, because sometimes what you're doing is you're exposing what we did well or what we didn't. But I think what you guys have done with the AARs afterwards sets you up ahead of time for knowing as an organization, You can have challenges or screw ups. We're going to talk about them. We're going to train on them, but we're going to recover and we're going to move on then. And that's really where the recovery portion came. How do we recover and how do we move on then moving forward?
Focus on what to learn.
Yep, exactly. So the first one there, talking about size and the occupancy. Obviously on this one here, as we've gone through, we've talked a lot about it. If you look at the next slide, it talks about life safety, search and rescue, construction of the building, the fire load of the occupancy, any type of built-in arrangements. And I think one of the ones that kind of across the fire service, a lot have been talking about is the life safety portions of it. And we know on that next slide is if you look at that residential occupancy, and there's probably about 4 different ones that are on there, all different sizes and shapes and stuff. But we've learned through the research is that we could pull up to any one of those with just some heavy fire showing from the front of that place. And our ability to still have room or an area in there that's survivable is that we know that probably at the end of it, what's going to get them is not the fire, but the oxygen content is going to be low in there. So, you know, I just think today when we look at it and when we talk about the actual fire load, we're seeing, and as we know with plastics and everything, is that fire growth, which was in the past, what was it, like 19 minutes to flash over on that traditional furnishing. Now, if you look at, or legacy.
Natural, legacy, cotton.
And now if you look at the modern, you know, we're looking at 3 minutes to a flash over. So, you know, going back to those residents that we have right there, there is an opportunity for us to be able to get in there, and life safety is a huge portion of what we do in searching those occupancies. I know we've had some success here recently with Vent Enter Search, sorry, and being able to some people have been able to get in, grab somebody and being able to get out of those. Construction styles, I think across the district is as much as what we see here is that ranch style home to the new modern, to that one in the upper right-hand corner. You probably wouldn't know it, but in the middle of that is a trailer. The guy has a trailer and then built a house all the way around that. And I have seen a few as my travel around the district here. We do have a few of those that are out there. But I think for us doing the 360, getting around those, the tactics that you all have been doing at the battalion level and reinforcing really has led to our success. You run to the next one there. Now we're starting to get a little bit bigger of an occupancy. We're leading residential. Now we're starting to go to that small, medium-sized commercial building. And as we've talked, the dynamics of that building has changed. And we're doing it right now when we're looking at strip malls. Is that the first thing for me is my ability to get in and out of that building went from every room having something to be able to get in or out of, whether it's a window, a door, or something to get around there, to now I have a front door and a back door.
Yeah.
And where these two places are, the back door's probably got more security than you can imagine to be able to get out. Yeah. It's Fort Knox, our ability to get in and get out. And then, you know, if you think about really, we're doing search and rescue to a point now where we start talking about evacuation. And I look at these places and we have really, when we size up the front of them, and we look at them, we know a lot of these places are open. People are awake, conscious, alert that are inside of there. And a lot of people, when they see the smoke, will self-evacuate. And I've seen that. I've dealt with fires in a Home Depot. I've, you know, in large structures, a number of these places. But I also think it's important, and I can't remember what the anniversary was, but the East Coast, it was in a bar. It was the Great White was the one that was playing the Station House fire, where if you have your first due and knowing your first due of that type of occupancy, most people that were in there probably had been in there and drinking. If you remember, the fire starts and a lot of people are thinking it's part of the entertainment that is going on. And then as the fire extends, and that place had soundproofing in there, as the fire extends with the video, people are trying to get back out the same way they came in, which is that front door.
Human dynamics. Yeah.
Human dynamics of it. And they're trying to control access for money and stuff. And so literally from the video to the stage right, there's a door where all the band and everybody gets out of, but people try to go back out the same way. So in your first due, if I have an occupancy that I know is occupied, it's that type of bar, type place that's in there, it's important that, hey, I have a pre-plan. Now, on that one there, man, the ability to put water on the fire and take away the hazard is probably one of the biggest things that you can do to make a difference. And then, you know, we look at these here, but if you think about a nursing home or some type of facility, and we really think about the fire load, you know, I have a spot in my mind. For you two guys, what do you think the two places for the fire load is in a nursing home?
I'm thinking, well, and it's funny because I'm sure there's different nursing homes, but I think in laundry rooms, probably one of them. Or
Exactly.
The place I'm thinking of up in 109's area.
Oh, they have nursing homes up
A
there?
few of them.
Yeah.
I've spent a few times, a little bit of time there. And then maybe if they have a kitchen or something like that. Maybe
No,
there's food storage.
You're exactly right on.
Storage.
Now, we will always have the patient that has, you know, a mask that's on about 15 liters that decides they got to have one more cigarette. And we have a small bedroom fire type stuff in there. But, you know, you think about it is that the potential is in the laundry area and in the kitchen area. Typically in those, there's not to the front, it's all the way to the rear. And then there's usually some type of rear entry or loading dock area type stuff. So perfect opportunity is during those EMS calls is where are my 3 top potential places. And so, you know, the kitchen area, the other one would be, as you said, the laundry area. And then there's always some type of gardener or somebody that's got gasoline and
Maintenance
stuff.
shed, yeah.
Maintenance. And how would I prioritize that response? And what do I need to be able to do? But going back to those again, the ability to put water on the fire, removing the hazard versus trying to evacuate a large number of people.
Non-ambulatory.
And isolate them becomes probably one of the easiest ways. The last one there is the large commercial occupancy. Well, here's another one is that restaurant we talked about, and then the apartments. And I think we've talked a lot about apartments here lately. Huge structures, and then very compartmentized. You know, every one of them is probably 800 to 1,000 square feet. And then you get to this one here, just the huge big box building, obviously new construction. We pulled up on this, we saw that much, we'd be wondering with sprinkler systems of today of what is going on in there, what is happening inside that structure. In the early 80s in Phoenix, we had a carpet warehouse in which a fire started in a number of, almost an older building, but a very similar building to this. And it's actually in almost the same exact neighborhood as this building is in. The carpet started on fire. Firefighters went in there, the sprinkler system was going off, but it was just cold smoke all the way down to the floor. Again, left the hose line inside the structure, found it, ran out of air trying to get out of the building, got to roll-up doors, couldn't open up the doors. We were very lucky that the 2 firefighters were found and removed, but at the same time, very challenging because of now huge occupancy. And again, 3 o'clock in the morning, searching for an occupancy that normally has, 8 to 5. And the ability to search 20,000 square feet. What is the time that it really will take? And the reality is the best thing we can do is put the fire out. And at that time, anybody that we can search and find, we'll be able to do that and remove them from there. I know you had a question there.
I have a couple questions for you, Chief. The first one is, what should the benchmarks be for when to look at establishing level 2 and level 3 rig companies at commercial fires? And in the future, are we looking at having a regional rescue at confirmed commercial fires?
So benchmarks for RIC establishment, this is one of the challenges we've had over the last few years, and talking about and getting to a point where we can talk about not painting a black and white picture necessarily, but utilizing what the incident is telling us for when we do it. If we feel like we need it, there's probably a reason we feel like we need those additional levels, probably should have it. So it's all based on the incident, what the incident is giving us. We're talking a big box fire. You could say there's a fire in the Walmart, and you could think the Walmart storage area is on fire. Well, I'm thinking, well, somebody lit a garbage can in the bathroom, you know, so there's differences there. And so we want to leave that ability for those critical decisions to be made by the incident because of what the incident is telling us. And then we also have the SROG so that we can reference that for establishing those levels of RIC. And what the second question, what was the second one?
Second question is, with the importance of pre-plans, is there any plan to replace Dennis Murray's position? 101 has 7 to 10 different occupancies awaiting pre-plan revisions.
So working, with our community, the CRRD, and going through and hiring, we are looking at some of those opportunities for GIS and reinstituting and updating what we have been doing to be a better model for moving forward for our pre-plans.
I think they're hiring someone right now, aren't they? For
Job
trying to get
announcements
that
out there,
trying to get it moved forward. So I'll throw this out there. This is just the fire chief talking, and this is going to make a lot of people start to cringe.
Yeah, we get some more questions.
We get some more questions on this one here. I agree with you, and it is probably timing wise, and then soon with the fire ground survival to revisit again the RIC side of it and everything. But one of the things that out of this, we went through some phases of looking at upping the size of RIC that was coming in and isolating the RIC and standing by and doing things versus a concept of what's called on deck. And it is just a different way of looking at deploying companies. And of course, I'm very familiar with it. It's new to a lot of people. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but it's putting companies in the best position for being able to go to work. And I think it's important because if you look at kind of the statistics I told you just a little bit ago of how long does it take to rescue someone out of a building that's deep into a building. And the concept though is a little bit of a switch, and I know I'm jumping ahead of where we're at, but I think it's so important to do it, is that if you get into trouble, what's the number one best way to survive?
Get out of
Get
trouble.
out of trouble.
Right, by who?
By yourself.
By yourself, exactly.
Self-rescue, yeah.
Self-rescue. So the number one thing, believe me, boys, my questions aren't going to be very hard on you here today, is the number one thing that we identified is being able to rescue yourself or those skills that will keep you safe. So when we go into a commercial building, there should be something in the back of your head, or the captain should say, hey, everybody stay on the line. Because we know if we get off the line, the ability to get back out of it is challenged. But we know that if you get in trouble, one of the best things that can happen is that you rescue yourself. What's the next level of rescue?
Next closest unit.
People with you.
The people that you're with. Yeah, and yours is right there. But the people that you're with and communicating that, hey, there's something that's going on. I still wish we had the ability to have an intercom in our SCBAs. And being able to talk to each other and say, hey, Adam, Chief House, I'm over here. Where are you guys at? And you say, hey, we're all over here. And you instantly know, hey, there's something wrong here. Because we talk about, when we go into a structure, we're all going to stay together and stay on a line. Is that reality? No. Is that we talked about it just a little bit ago about extended lines into a structure, and that everywhere we hit a corner, we have to have what? Somebody there moving the line. And so we spread out along the line. And Chief House, I don't know how I'm going to do this Adam thing, but Chief House.
House and Mitchell.
House and Mitchell. If you're the captain, your accountability may be at the nozzle, but you're accounting for all of us by being able to stay along. I still wish we could get to a intercom system.
Absolutely.
It still is a struggle to get those electronics to work because of our ability to communicate. And someone said it, how was radio traffic during during this event and stuff? And it was terrible. You're managing Maydays and command came on. And another thing about managing the Maydays is that unless you keep all good information to yourself, unless you have bad information, just stay off the radio. And all I want to know is what we're going to do until we rescue the firefighter. Again, the same thing happens at the task levels, that you have to be able to do it. So that crew that you're with, and telling your crew you're having a struggle, the next ones are the crews that are around you. And so at one point, as we were going through this, it looked like, hey, you have a Mayday, let's move everybody off to a different channel. We were going to move the Mayday person to a different channel and realize, okay, that's the worst person to move is the person that's in trouble. but moving everybody else and then saying, actually, everybody needs to be on the same channel because those crews that are there are the ones that are going to have the opportunity to save the individual. And really, by the time I get to Rick, knowing that it probably, if I'm 100 feet inside the building, 40 feet off the line, it's going to take 8 minutes for someone to get to me. Think of the dynamics of 8 minutes on a fire ground. The Rick company, now in my mind, is the thing that comes in and supports the crews that are doing the rescue, or if it's a long rescue, or those things that are built into it. But with the on-deck concept, or whatever we would look at calling those things, it gives you as the incident commander options of being able to move people forward, be in a position staffed, and they're ready to deploy. It also gives companies an option for being able to make tactical decisions. So you look at either a structure like this or a residential or an apartment, and I need another line into a second occupancy, or I need someone to the backside of the building. Being able to layer that response gives us almost an opportunity right away. Now, the difference is that when you pull up, you don't stage in vehicles, you get out, you go forward, you have your tools, you're ready to go to work. Some days you do a lot of walking and you don't do any work at all, but other days you're in a position to be able to go to work. But going all the way back to the beginning of it is rescuing yourself, your crews that are next to you, or your own crew, and then the crews next to you is the best rescue matrix that is available out there. All right, any other questions? Next one just talks about on the slides, if you think about it, there's our career. It was very visual, is that we start over there with a small residence. We probably do 10 or 20 residents, and then we do maybe a strip mall or a strip event, or maybe a big apartment, and then we do a number of residential again, and then we have that big box. And probably the reality, depending on where you're working at, is a fire in a big box occupancy, offensive fire attack, maybe 3 or 4 times in your career. So we look at our success is what we do day in and day out in those small boxes is very good firefighting skills, but taking them to that big box can get us into trouble. And on the next slide, you can see is that the ability to, the environment in the little ones is very forgiving. Manage my air used to be, your low air alarm would go off, and that was merely the announcement. I would still stay until I knew I was getting really low, because I could bend over, look out the front, and I could see the utility parked out the front of it. It's a pretty safe distance. It's a lot of ability to get out of there, the attack lines that are in front, and it is a forgiving environment. Unfortunately, when we take it to the next one and the next slide, is that commercial building is just too big. And we saw it is that we didn't manage our air. And when we talk about air management, and again, since we're all bouncing around here a little bit, some of the statistics that came out of that for air management is that I think we burn, or if you're looking at air, about 175 PSI. I don't want to get it wrong. 175 PSI per minute.
Per minute. You're talking about the breakdown, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your analogy back when you stated about 8.5 minutes on what would be considered our 30-minute bottles was already exceeding our low air alarm.
Yeah. So when we look at that air management and we think in the process of what do I need to do for a round trip ticket,
Right.
It's important to think about 175 PSI per minute and back in the day there. And I think we just went out of what was ours before? 3,000 PSI before?
3,030 minutes.
Yeah. And so really reality is you get about 16 to 18 minutes of air time. And then if you look at our new bottle, and I know I wrote it down somewhere, but if you look at 5,500 and you use the same analogy of 175 PSI per minute, 2/3 of it, which used to be 3/4 of the bottle was working 1/4 alarm. Now it's 2/3 working 1/3 alarm. We get about 3,800 PSI, which is about 21 minutes working time. And then with the reserve of 1,900, you got about 10 minutes on the alarm side of it. So it becomes important when we manage our air, we got to think about how much air do I need to get in? How much air do I need to get out? some type of safety margin that is in there, then the rest of that truly is my working time. And so when you talk about layering resources or on-deck resources, and if you think about elapsed time on the fire ground, it takes us about 5 minutes is our average response. Our BCs are arriving anywhere between about 7 and 10 minutes in starting to manage the fire ground. And as we get into the new CAD system, the ability to mark time for our incident commanders and our folks that are on scene is going to become more and more. I think it's important today. The ability to do it and be able to give an update for command is going to become important, because we all know is that time just goes really quick when we're on the fire ground, and you start to lose that. Now, most residential fires last how long?
It's 10, 12, something like that.
Yeah.
Not very long.
Yeah, it's somewhere between about 14 and 16 minutes. We show up, we go in, we can search 1,800, 2,500 square feet, put water on the fire, check for extension, truck company comes, goes to the roof, ventilates. Our bottles very functionally work during that time for being able to do it. So looking at this and thinking today we have 21 minutes, and you're thinking about a work cycle for people. We said our response time for that first initial response is about 5 minutes. Now as we start getting second due, third due, you start talking about station 59 is kind of outside of that, which is a longer response. But for a lot of people, as we start to hit 10 minutes on the fire ground, and if we're not getting progress on the fire, we have to start thinking about resources and layering, and that we bring in the next resources up so that we're not waiting until someone's low on air, but we have people in place. And really, when we looked at these things, and a lot of people, there's a group of guys in Seattle that have done a lot of studying on air management and wrote some books about it. Knowing that there is someone outside to be able to hand off to and be able to come in and continue the firefight is important, knowing that that's there versus, hey, I'm going to accomplish it and complete it.
Just give me another minute. I got it in 1 more minute.
I got another minute, I'm going to do that. Yeah. So the important now of layering resources, not only when we talk about kind of the rescue side of it, but also on the firefight becomes important. Now, I like what we've done here, and I think, Adam, you were saying before that, you know, a 2-in-1 assignment was very common here, and we've updated and we've really front-ended our events. And I'm sure if we went back 20 years, things that used to be multiple alarm fires here are not multiple alarm fires, but they are overloaded on the front end with the same amount of people. And what we're able to do is deploy, get ahead of the event. I think the only next step for us, logical, is just how do we layer resources on the fire ground? And what are we doing to put people into place so that if we're going to stay offensive, we're in that and been able to cover it, or as the fire is extending, we're well ahead of it. But air management is a key portion of that, and being able to manage our air on the fire ground, rotating out. I think most people today will do just fine with 2 bottles. I know during the summer, you guys think that it's hot, and I'm sure it is hot, but
It's dry heat. It's dry heat.
It's a dry heat here. That becomes harder and harder, and then putting an additional company on it, just as we think of that work cycle and working through work cycles versus just a full attack and then layering behind. Yes, sir.
Good.
No questions?
You were just speaking about a comment that Chris Stewart had about layering of resources. And you're the right person for the job, Jim, to help us work through it.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for viewing in. Moving on, we talked about that. What's our next slide? Where are we at? Kind of communications, radio communications. One of the questions that came up, which was, how was the radio discipline there? You can imagine working through 12 Maydays, the amount of companies that were on the radio, the key of radio discipline, and the ability to do face-to-face, the ability to put command officers in our different divisions. Did you catch that, Chief House? Divisions?
I did.
Divisions.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good. You
And-
didn't
and
say
then
something.
being able to do that
Where that was going.
That's why I hit it
is
early.
key. In listening, I think that as an organization, we've really put a lot of work into it. Some of the things that I see on there is the on-scene report. I think we do a really good job of that. A lot of progress reports using the CAN portion of it. If you go to the very next one there, what's our conditions? Talking about your air. One of the things with visibility inside there, and especially when you go to commercial, do I have 1 foot of visibility or 25? Is it changing? Because if you think about it, if I'm in a supermarket and I've got 25 feet, 30 feet of visibility inside here, I think all of us right away have an image that comes to mind. If I say I have 1 foot of visibility and I tell you you're in a 20,000 square foot supermarket with a 20-foot ceiling, I'm hoping that after the first half of this, you have a different feeling on what's going on inside there. Heat, we tried to figure out different ways to do it, mild, moderate, or severe, or describing heat. Mild, moderate, severe just seemed to be the thing, is that mild heat, you got a little bit of, you know that there's heat inside there. Moderate is that, yeah, I'm starting to feel heat. Severe, I'm down on the floor. And again, it paints a picture of what's your heat conditions inside of it. One that is, I think, more and more early on in an incident, and I'm hearing it being identified, are these hoarder houses.
Yeah.
And just the challenges. And as soon as I hear that, there's a couple things from me that come to mind. I don't know about you guys. What happens when you hear that?
Well, access
Entry and egress,
Yeah,
getting to the
that's-
seat of the fire, getting to where I need to be, getting out of that occupancy, and then fire load is now, contents is just off the charts.
And your
So-
ability not just to get to the seat of the fire, but perform some of those other operations with rescue. And I know we had one a few months back where you couldn't get in to do it, but to get in, you had to get in to do the VEIS and.
Yeah, the window was the only way that they
You couldn't
got
get
into
You
it.
can't get from here to there going that way. You got
Yeah.
to figure out something different. Yeah.
No, I think it's the same thing, Adam, that Chief House that you brought up on that one there, which is right away when I hear that nowadays, it's what not only is what is our ability to get into it, but
Get out.
How do we get
how do
out?
we get back out of these things? And we all know that most of them are tunnels. You know, they have a little walkway that they go through, put a little bit of fire, a little bit of water in there, and the walkway is gone in trying to do it. And the amount of flashovers or fire conditions, the dynamics, how quick they change in those things. And I don't know why, but it seems like every time I've heard hoarding, when they've opened the garage door, there's not another inch left in there.
Yep.
You know, it's just
Packed.
all the way to the front there. And again, when we talk about either layering companies or rig companies on those things, doing that 360, being able to get around the building, just becomes key. So that report, and on the fire ground, I think it's interesting that we all start in the same spot, which is out front. And the first in company officer and the communication side, there is more than enough bandwidth in the very beginning for that on scene and for painting the picture of what we're going on there. I know we don't need to describe, you know, the sky and the stars and what I'm seeing, but doing a good, clear, basically front end of that. And why I think it's important is as a company comes in behind them where the BC shows up, and if it has changed or it's different, it's a huge portion of that size up of conditions are getting worse. Is, hey, he showed up and said there was heavy smoke showing from the eaves, and I show up and there's fire now venting out of both eaves of this house. It really paints that picture. But on the front end of it, that captain is really the only person that has the opportunity to size up and then walk across the threshold. And I really believe is that with a little bit of experience, you can get across the threshold and you'll have a pretty good feeling on how is this gonna go. Is as I went in here, what's my visibility inside here? What's the heat like? What's my ability to move around inside of this structure? What is that size up? And that company officer is the only person that really is able to get it. And what I've heard, which is great, is the guys that come back or gals that have come back and said, hey, this is a hoarder situation. And I think just that little bit of it paints that picture really quick. And then, you know, the other one, and I know we've spent a lot of time with it, is that garage that's fully involved. or the attic that it looks like it's an isolated attic fire, and then opening up the front door, and if it's clear inside, and telling people, hey, I've got a fully involved garage and this thing is clear inside of here. It paints that picture, or I have an isolated attic fire. If you go back to the slides and kind of move forward from conditions, what's my actions? We're searching, update. I think it's okay. We don't hear it very often that we're retreating from a building, but if people are being driven out of a building, I think it's important that we tell them, hey, we're getting driven out of here. It's okay to tell others to get out of the structure at this time. And the last one I think is really important is needs. What do I need? What equipment is needed? Do we need ventilation? The one that is the one I hear a lot, or not a lot, but the one was that we need nothing.
Yeah, don't send anybody else in here.
Yeah, I don't need any more companies. We got, too many people that are in here already. And that portion of it, and then really if you think about as companies, having the ability to hold your company back and not just self-assigned to something. And again, I think that we're doing a very good job at being able to do that and manage that flow, because 2 companies in a 1,500 square foot house, I would guess most of the time is more than enough people.
Yep.
Move people forward, put them in a position, and then move forward from there. So this CAN system, I'll just have to give a shout out. A guy named Josh Voynich is the person that was a captain in Phoenix that came up with this. And it came from because communications was such a struggle. And one of the things that he brought forward on communicating on the fire ground. How we doing there, producer? 30 minutes. Any other questions or anything? Fire stage, moving forward in this one. If you look at this next one here, it talks about the different stages of the fire. And this was taken out of Bruno's books back in the day. You had that incipient stage. Then it goes to the working fire on the next one there. If we can move forward to the next one, there we go, extended, deep-seated. And we talked about how these stages kind of progressed on the fire ground. The difference is, and we talked about a little bit ago, the modern today's environment versus the legacy environment of the past, and thinking that the modern environment is going to go from that incipient stage to fully involved in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And the legacy was 29 minutes and 30 seconds of that other one. And so time on the fire ground for us is changing. And we all know that we can go the first 2 and then become vent limited. And again, the ability to coordinate our ventilation and our attack, and ventilation being not just vertical ventilation, but opening up that front door, being to see what is going on, having and it really goes back to firefighting skills, having our basic firefighting skills. And I'm just impressed in ourselves. And I get out there enough to watch people manage a hose line. And if you think about us parking in front of the house, and from the engine out front to the front door might be 75 feet, and we have 200 feet of line. And we've all seen somebody pull 150 feet of it within 8 feet of the front door. But the ability to manage that, and then the ability to coordinate and really ventilation with our truck companies. And we're hearing that just a lot. I think more now of yes, ventilate, don't ventilate, but being in a position ready to go, even if they cut the hole and not louver it, but being able to communicate those things and being able to move forward, because when you want it, you want it. Mm-hmm. And being able to communicate it together, I think is just really important as we move through there. One of the things that we're going to skip probably forward about 8 slides. It's the one here, Joe, when we talk about time and we talk about, there we go. We talk about that engagement. And I don't know, have we looked at this slide at all? I think at all. It's obviously a commercial building, and we have number 1 to number 9. And if we look through there, I think the question for us, and as we look at time as it elapses on the fire ground, is where does offensive end and where does defensive operations begin? And obviously we have a commercial building here, and we look at those factors. We want to look at the building, the type of occupancy that we have, the rescue profile. What's my arrangements or my ability to move around the outside of this thing? And then the other thing would be, what is my resources that I have, or what additional resources that I have coming? I think if we all look at number 1, we would agree that it's offensive. And if we all look at number 9, we'd probably agree that it's defensive. And so we've got the rest of it in there as we move forward. It's obviously a commercial occupancy. Knowing this one here, it is like an AC place. And then over to the left is a bingo hall. And so we know that the one on the right side of it is a high fire load, but very low as far as people. To the left is the bingo hall over there. The building is concrete block construction. It's got a wood truss roof that's on side of it. But I start working through it now. What do we see between 1 and 2?
No smoke versus you're seeing some smoke.
Yeah. Yeah, we got some type of, it's actually like a cooler vent on the top of it. So we got a little bit of smoke that's coming out of there. Little light smoke. I'm looking at it. It's still offensive. It's something I'm going to figure out and go in there. When I think of the arrangement, especially the building on the right side there, you got the doors you go in. You have a kind of a open area in the front that is a kind of a showcase office area. In the back half of this is a warehouse that goes to the back. So we know in the front there's some protection that's in place. What happened in number 3?
Starting to fill the box, windows are getting stained.
Yeah.
It's overcoming the building's ventilation.
Air handling components.
So we got something that's going on in
Probably
there.
shifting from a contents fire into more structure at this point.
More of a structure.
Making the change.
Starting to fill it up, starting to fill the box up. I'm still looking at that. I'm still offensive.
Yeah.
I'm still looking at that portion there. I don't see anything else that's going on. As I go to number 4, though, I start to look at that one there, and that light smoke has now turned from light smoke to where now I have some heavy smoke. And obviously this is a drawing, but I think it's important as we go through those things and we talk about tactics of that thought process that I'm going through. And if I'm command and I'm looking at that one, there's some heavy smoke that's starting to come out of there. The windows are definitely blacked over. It might be a little bit of fire that's right there. In my mind, there's probably an opportunity that if that first line makes a difference, is that if I'm able to put water on the fire and being able to produce some type of conversion and see some positive portions of it, we have an offensive opportunity to be able to go into that structure, but it's going to be very, very limited for what we're able to do. To me, number 5 is defensive. And when we look at that there, probably the biggest thing when I look at this is that the spread has become lateral. And by that, I'm looking at that attic space. Now the front half of the windows are gone. I feel that it's going to go 5, 6, 7, and it's going to go really quick. And so when we talk about time, we show up 1, 2, 3, time is on our side. And if we look at fire conditions and the growth of fire conditions in there, now we do know today's fire dynamics as we give it air, our ability to coordinate, have crews ready, be able to do in position ready to go. If I think about this building, as an incident commander or as a firefighter, what's one of the biggest hazards of this building to me? Yeah. Collapse portion, fire in the attic. You know, the ability to walk in that front door, pull ceiling real quick. And if I'm command, I'm going to ask you, hey, what's going on? What do you see above you? And then I'll jump over is that if you are the truck and you're assigned to the roof, and we set it on a residential, we kind of get a little bit of an update, you know, on a residential fire. Fire in the attic in a residential is not defensive.
Right.
It is really at that point, communications with the crews inside. Hey, you've got some fire above your head. Let's get ahead of it. This one here, to me, one of the priorities is knowing the engine crew making access in there. They pull ceiling above them, what's going on above your head. But one of the things that I would look for really early is from that truck. Once you get on that roof, what do you got? What are you seeing as far as vents? What are you seeing as far as, did that burn through the roof, or is that smoke coming from a vent? And then when you ventilated this thing, what's happening? And in number 5, that thing's running. And the ability to get above that or get inside and get ahead of it is very difficult. And why I like these pictures here and applying it is that comment we made probably on number 1 as we started going through these factors. And take it as a grain of salt. 9 could still be offensive if this was a house. Because we know that we're going to be able to come up and hit it and possibly convert it. To me, number 9 is that garage that's fully involved. And we know that we can hit it, we can put some water on it. I know we've talked a little bit here lately about some fire flows and maybe some opportunities to maybe do some stuff and maybe get some partners to help with us, but look at some garages and say, what does it take to be able to convert that and then be offensive going in? And so when we talk about the tactical side of this and applying residential skills to a commercial building is being able to look at that and know 5, 6, 7 time-wise, fire growth probably is going to go really quick. Knowing also that because it's an occupancy, and I threw it out there that the left side is a bingo hall, just because it gives you that dynamic is as a priority, do I have to get over there? If that's A, watch this now, I'm going to go over here to the Bravo side. Is it a priority? Oh, heck yeah. You know, and knowing that's there, and we're going to size it up by the amount of cars that are in the parking lot and stuff. But this is an occupancy. You go by there on a Friday night, and the one on the right is nobody. Yeah. But that one to the left is going to be filled in there. Absolutely. Just because of cigarette smoke, the smoke level is probably about 4 feet off the floor anyways. But, you know, you take the same one and you take Monday at, you know, 11:45, and there's nobody in the bingo side, and really our rescue or our size up is going to be to the store, which we know most people are going to evacuate in there. So again, this one here, I think we could probably spend a couple hours with just this one talking about past tactical and strategic, setting this up. This would be a perfect one when you talk about the deployment of RIC companies and saying is where do you put your RIC companies at? How would we possibly do something with on-deck companies? The challenges of doing a 360. So again, going back to residential, we have really stepped up our 360s and being able to get to the back, either the initial companies, the initial command, or the second VC being able to do it. The layout of this one, you will get probably about 2.5, maybe about 3 sides really easy. The back side of this building, you're really probably not going to get a lot of feedback until really late into the incident, but it doesn't stop our ability to do that. Who do you assign to do that? How do we be able to get that information back? Joe, you got something for us?
I had a question from Ryan Manfredi. He wanted to know if you thought wind would be a good thing to add to that safety considerations for today's fires.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, as we talked in the beginning of the Southwest one, the wind on that day blowing the way it did, I think that we've become smarter about the impact of wind on the event, and you guys are really probably more of the experts because of your background in wildland. And I'll be the first to admit, you know, my wildland experience is the median between the highway that has, you know, 2 feet of brush in there, and we were in Phoenix, we were really getting after it there. The way that you all look at those weather factors and apply it is I think it's much more natural for you than it is for me. Even if you go back to the picture that we had with the occupancies, this just is telling of where I come from. You know, there's no wind on this whatsoever. Everything is going straight up. But Ryan, you are right on of knowing, and again, I have become, because of all of you, more conscious of that. It's interesting, in Phoenix in the morning, the wind blows east to west. Noon it stops, and in the afternoon it blows west to east. That's why the airport has 2 runways. It's very easy to do. Now you look at the dynamics here and what we have and the different fronts that come through. So wind is a factor, and the changing of it.
We had just this last month when we did our professional development presentation, we talked, one of the incidents was from us last year up in Battalion 7 and the North Wind event that moved it from the grass into the multi-unit residential townhomes, and what that did to the incident for where it was, but where it's going to be here very shortly. So good point, Ryan. Thanks.
That is perfect. That one there, and then the video from the helicopter from that was a perfect view of, now what do I do?
Yep.
And having another dynamic that's
Where do you draw
added.
your line?
Exactly.
And where are you gonna put
where
your
am I
stuff?
going to get to? Joe, can you go all the way to the end and then back one? There's a lot of them you guys can see that were in there. A lot of this we have talked about, and shoot, we'll figure out a time again, and maybe we'll do the considerations as we move forward from there. But to kind of put a end of it, and I'll let you guys kind of talk first, and then I'll put my last bit on this. I think we've got about 12 or 13 more minutes left, and then we'll call it a day.
We started.
Just in general, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of information in here, and again, appreciate the time and the experience you have bringing to this and having this conversation, and looking forward actually to the conversations that are going to occur today around the firehouse dinner tables and things about what are the differences between residential and commercial. And we've talked a lot about that over the last couple of years. We talked about the Talking Tactics series. We started with residential. We went through apartments. We're now talking about strip malls, and next is big box. And our progression through differentiating those, but reinforcing consistency in how we do our operations. And you saw a picture there. I'll talk about the command manual that just got finally published. And it talks about our philosophy on how we make decisions to adapt to the different situations we're presented with, residential, commercial, the theory or the incident alignment philosophy and how that works on making sure that everything's lining up so that we do our best to not have the Swiss cheese come into alignment, to have these events, and training on those and the discussions that we've done have been really across the shifts, across all the 5 battalions, across the 3 shifts, about driving us to a more consistent operational picture. And we're doing a fantastic job of that. And so I know the other things that are up here too. I mean, maybe Chief House, I know you got a good background with the thermal imaging cameras and things like that about what we're doing with that next, and knowing that situational awareness and increasing our ability to see and understand what we're dealing with, the importance behind that, and what we're doing with those. That's an exciting piece that's coming here very shortly.
Absolutely. We have a large search drill plan to start sometime mid-April. It's going to include what we've found is, need in the organization of going back and looking at our search techniques and what works and what doesn't work. And you talked about, like rig packs and large area search bags. It was about 8 years ago since we've done a district-wide search drill, and we came out of that knowing that we needed to make some changes. The crews that train on that all the time absolutely are proficient at it, but it came down to really the self-survival and crews being closest to that person, and not making it more complicated than what it needs to be. But we're going to roll out the new seat assigned tick cameras, along with keeping our other ones. They're not replacing those other tick cameras. It's in conjunction with. So that should be a good drill. We'll talk about lessons learned there too. When I look at this in totality, it's great to see where we're at, and the improvements we made, not only local with our agency, but regionally with the SOGs and some of our significant fires, lessons learned. We talk about transparency from an organization to share, be willing to share. We have to be. If we're not, shame on ourselves not at least talking about it and making improvements. But I go back to really the heart of what I believe good tactics and strategy are. And you hit the points, Chief, quite a bit about that, is that we cannot treat a commercial fire like the last residence that we were on. They are different. We don't worry about air management on residential structure fires because we've done those well over the course of years. But recognizing that the complexity has changed, the intel that we need. So we talked about, like Ryan Manfredi talking about wind. So I question, well, yeah, it's important to say and talk about, what are you doing about it? Are you making the shift to apply a different tactic or strategy to that event, that actionable event that we see, and having positive change, and really asking ourselves is, at some point on a commercial building, we really have to ask ourselves, what are we doing here at this point? Mm-hmm. Are we really saving life? Have we confirmed that there's livable conditions still and what the status of the structure currently is? And are we making forward progress or not? And we can put some time into that. Time really is a factor of maybe jotting our memory to say, yeah, I'm not seeing this thing improve. I better start asking some more questions and get some more intel on what the change is. So I appreciate that you wanted to do this. We did this, and it was obvious that it's a need in the region because we have almost crashed the site. I think we're at
That's a good thing.
pinnacle of 100 people signed on during today. From a local agency standpoint for Metro Fire, we've recognized, and I think Deputy Chief Mitchell will echo this, is that this is absolutely a need going forward. We're going to continue to have these TED Talks on tactics and strategy. And, I think it's worthy of having the conversation. We'll throw out some questionable items just to get conversation. So I appreciate everybody's question and participation. Treat your next commercial incident different than your last successful fire, please. If we walk away from anything today, treat it differently. Slow down a little bit, figure out what you have, get a good game plan going, and learn from these lessons. We owe it to Phoenix for sharing. We owe it for firefighter Tarver for his ultimate sacrifice. So thanks, Chief.
You bet. Thank you guys for being here. I think, as you said, going through and doing this is just so important, and having the ability to have conversations, the ability to tape it and put it back out and then share it with anybody else. I'm with you. The way of honoring Brett's death is to be able to prevent this from ever happening again. I think it's absolutely key. On the last slide, there was a few things that were there, and one of the things that is on there is those two buildings. And as you said, we had the command manual that is out now. We're doing some things with ticks. We've talked a lot about the things, but those two buildings are here. It's Battalion 14, and John Graff had a fire, and it was in the rear of that building. And again, if you look at the building in the upper right-hand corner, it was tucked into, if the front of the building is A, it was in that BC corner, tucked around the corner on the exterior of the building. And obviously, because of my experience, you can realize why I say it all the time, that I listen to the radio and listen to what's going on and everything. I listened to this portion as the commercial fire. The crews in B14 did a phenomenal job. And by what I liked about what they did there was, even though it was early on identified as on that really CD or BC corner and exterior, the ability to still deploy companies across the occupancies in the front, around the corner, identifying that this was a unique L-shaped area, putting the truck company onto the roof. John, I know it was probably like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Somebody was talking about coming across Sunrise or not, and continued the assignment all the way in, and truly treated it as Chief House, you said, different than the last residential. Mm-hmm. The deployment matrix was 100% in line with what he needed to do to make sure. And so that portion of it is when I look at that success side, is being able to hear about these incidents, or on this one here, listening to it. Again, my personality, called Charlie, talked to Charlie first, but then called John just to get, what was going on with him, what was he seeing and stuff. And Rich Wolf was the battalion chief at Southwest Supermarket, and spending a lot of time with Rich. and then talking with John on this one. Well, smoke was coming over the top of it, and this is what I was seeing and stuff. And on this one here was an event that, unless I had gone and taken a picture, we would have never talked about it again. But it lines up exactly in line with what we were talking about today, the residential versus commercial, our ability to continue exactly like you said. TED Talks or whatever we are, I know what the rest of my day is coming up. This is the most exciting part right here. This is the part that I love to be able to do, and Monday morning, and of course Monday mornings can be a very challenging, but this, I don't think there's anything more important than the investment that we all do at all levels. And the way I talk about it is strategic. And we will, I'm sure, talk about a bunch of things that happened over the last few days, and we'll get to those in time. But the ability to do this, the ability to invest in training, as you said, search drills coming up, the amount of activity that it takes for the training group to put on live fire training, and all of the neighbors we have to talk to, and Chief Mitchell tries to burn down the neighbor's house during that time, and stuff that we have to buy. There's just nothing that's more important than those opportunities. And I know we have kind of a full schedule, and it's going to be time to get back to say, okay, how can we do live fire training as a district again? And what's exciting is I think we all, we have more plans than we have time to be able to do it, which is a great thing to have as an organization as we move forward. So we're ending up on time here. I just want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in today. The feedback so far has been great, and then we will continue to do these things moving forward. Have a great week. Wednesday is St. Paddy's Day, so
Everybody's Irish.
everybody's Irish on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
everybody.
good week.